This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, welcome everybody. I'm going to call to order the May 20th meeting of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners. To get things started, first we're going to do a roll call vote. Renee, would you mind, please?
Commissioner Walk.
Here.
Commissioner Mobilio.
Here.
Commissioner Kelly.
Here.
Commissioner Seton.
Here.
Commissioner Morgan.
Here. Thank you, Renee. Next this evening, we are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance in honor of our country. If everybody would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I have a flag behind me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of
America,
America,
to
to
the
the
republic
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's always difficult when we're delayed. But thank you, everybody. I'd also like to note that the board did meet in executive session right prior to this public session to discuss personnel and legal matters. I'd like to note that all public sessions of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners are electronically recorded. The electronic record is kept until the minutes of the meeting are approved and destroyed if a request is not made to retain the electronic version at that time. So we're going to go right into our meeting agenda this evening. And first on our agenda for consideration and possible action are our May 6, 2020 Board of Commissioner meeting minutes. They are in the packet for the board's consideration and possible action.
Commissioner Morgan, I did notice a typo in paragraph 7. About midway through, it was the budgeted amount for the playground. It actually said 110,000. I believe that number given that evening was 610,000.
I'm sorry, Diane, what page did you say? I apologize.
It's page 7.
Okay, great.
This is Mike Walk. I have one quick comment. I request
Paragraph
one word.
Hold on one second, Mike.
Yeah,
So
go back then.
is that correct, Renee and Randy? What's the correct number?
Yes, Commissioner Kelly is correct. We have 610,000 budgeted for the playground.
Okay, so that's a modification. Okay, great. Commissioner Walk, I'm sorry. What was your question?
Yes, hi. So page 9, this is a request to delete one word. There's a paragraph that reads, it starts with, Commissioner Walk said he doesn't feel we should stop the project now. I request that you delete the word now.
Okay.
I just want to add one thing very quickly, and that is that I am incredibly impressed with Tracy Daniel's job of putting these meeting minutes together. I mean, they're incredibly thorough. Anyone who reads them, in my opinion, gets a real good flavor and sense for exactly what went down at that meeting. So I just want to applaud her for the work that she's doing. I know she's not here today, but I hope that that Renee, you can pass along our appreciation for the work that she does on these minutes.
I will absolutely
Very nice.
do that.
Very nice, Matt. That's very true. Thank you. All right. Are there any other questions or comments to the May 6, 2020 Board of Commissioner meeting minutes from the board? Do I hear a motion for approval of the said minutes with the modifications as discussed? We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Walk. Could I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Sure. Commissioner Walk.
Aye.
Commissioner Mobilio.
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly.
Aye.
Commissioner Seton.
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next this evening for consideration or for possible adoption or for advertisement for possible adoption, I apologize. We have a motion requesting permission to advertise an ordinance amending Chapter 304, Article 3, Street Excavations of the Codified Ordinances of South Whitehall Township to permit an applicant to request a waiver, the provisions of Section 304-26J, and to provide for severability, retention of rights to enforce, repealer, and an effective date. I think we have who's going to be presenting? Is this Tom Harper?
Tom,
Yes.
Tom will tackle this one.
Thanks.
Great. Hi, Tom.
Hi. Thank you,
How are
and
you? Thanks.
I'm doing great.
Great.
I just want to thank you and good evening. Tonight, you're considering for adoption an ordinance amendment that will allow an applicant to seek relief from the street restoration work that is required in Chapter 304, Article 3, Section 304-26J. This section determines the amount of milling and paving restoration that needs to be done based upon the number, dimensions, and locations of street cuts done by the contractor or the applicant. This could lead to a small area to the whole street needing to be restored. This amendment will create a new subsection to 304-26, the letter N. In this subsection, an applicant will be required to present their waiver request for this relief to the Board of Commissioners, at which time the Board of Commissioners, during their waiver review process, will use the criteria set forth in the amendment when making their decision. And finally, this waiver does not relieve the applicant of complying with any other requirements of Section 304-26. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions or comments for Tom regarding this request to advertise? Any from the board?
Tori, this is up for possible adoption. This was already advertised.
That's correct.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, we have on here motion to advertise. So this is for final adoption?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. I will modify my statement then. Is there any questions on that particular request to adopt? None from the board. Are there any from the public? All right. That being said, do I hear a motion this evening to move forward to adopt the ordinance as amended and explained?
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
The second from Commissioner Stetton. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Commissioner Walk,
Aye.
Commissioner Mobilio,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Seton,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye. Motion carries and ordinance passes. Thank you. And directly related to that, we're going to jump around a little bit in our agenda this evening and go to the next motion, the first motion on the agenda, which is the UGI request for a waiver, which is directly related. Randy, would you like to present on this one, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. UGI should be on the call here today, so I'll turn things over to them briefly. But at the last meeting, I did tell the board that, you know, this is kind of why the ordinance that you just passed, the amendment was kind of moving forward in the direction we were. We felt it wasn't right of our ordinance to kind of strap the township residents to not receiving new utilities in their neighborhood. So after a meeting with UGI, staff put our thinking caps on and came up with what we feel is a happy median for both parties and the residents. So I'll turn things over to them if they're here. Hugh, are you on the line by chance?
I am, yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, the floor is yours, Hugh.
You can.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for your time on this meeting. I do have a quick PowerPoint. I'm not sure if you want to see it or not, or you want to allow me to present,
Of
but
course.
it addresses this project specifically.
Yep, Hugh, I will give you presenter capabilities here. All right, you are a presenter. Share your screen.
Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So here's the overview map of the project. Down in the left corner is Dorney Park. Up here, this is the Bungalow Park region. This area here is a little bit newer section that is served by natural gas that was installed when the homes were built. But this section in the pink here is currently has no gas main in front of it. So this is the area we're looking to extend our facilities into and give the residents the option of receiving natural gas. So this is just a quick slide. This is a get gas project. So a get gas means growth extension tariff, where we, UGI, upfronts the cost of installation and in front of the homes, and then the customers or potential customers have a 12-year window to hook up. They could pay an upfront hookup fee or a rider on their bill. And the projects must meet a minimum profitability requirement. So this is where it's fundamentally different than our replacement and betterment program, which we kind of have a different set of money to where we're replacing existing main. All the customers are hooked up, and at that time, that's kind of where we would do all the services and just mill and overlay the street at a time. Well, these projects are a little different in that the customers are hooking up over a 12-year period. So it's not quite the same. So restoration costs are a big driver in determining project financial livelihood. So the project statistics for this particular one is 5,100 linear feet of 2-inch plastic gas main. We will reach 75 new parcels. Public right-of-way is about 60 feet wide. The road is 30 feet wide. So there's 15-foot off-road edge on either side where gas could be installed. And this is where we were discussing the shade tree ordinance. I do understand the reasoning behind it. We think on this particular project with no real sidewalks throughout most of it, that there is room to fit shade trees in as well, even with our gas main installed off the road edge. Horizontal directional drill method means that we are not open cutting most of it. We will drill it and we will spot hole when we cross foreign utilities. There's currently strong interest from residents, which is why we're pursuing the project. And just a note, if we're required to install within the street, the high restoration and mill and overlay costs would push this project out of the acceptable financial range. And this is just kind of like an overview here. Our gas main is highlighted here, just off road edge. The right-of-way line is back here, so there's there's some space on this project to fit trees in if needed. We're only going on one side of the street as well. We're kind of leaving the other side open. So that was really just a presentation there. Quick overview for everyone. So I'll open it up to anyone who has questions for me on the style of project or anything we're asking here.
Yeah, I have a question for you. So I'm just I just want to be clear about something. If the waiver is granted, you would be permitted to install the gas lines within the right of way that would include the frontage of individual residential units, regardless of where those units want the gas, correct?
I'm sorry, you're cutting out a bit. Can you restate the last part of that?
Sure. I want to get an idea of the scope of the project. So,
yep.
Can you hear me? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're granted the waiver, this will allow you to essentially put the gas lines in on residential property that's within the right of way, regardless of whether that resident wants gas or not, correct?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay. And this was, I mean, I know there was the waiver process was requested, or the waiver process was, the change to the ordinance was advertised, but this particular motion would not have been advertised. Is that correct?
I'm not sure the mechanics there.
Well, Renee, do you
don't
know the answer to the question?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
believe motions are required to be
They
advertised.
don't have to be outside.
Yeah, the waiver does not have to be advertised. The
Okay,
same as the ordinance amendment would have to be advertised.
right. So I guess my concern is that we have residents who are on, constructive or actual notice of the fact that this ordinance change is going to be proposed. But what they don't realize is the ramifications of that being changed is that the front of their yards may be torn up to put the gas lines in that they don't necessarily intend to tap into. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm open for comments. I'm throwing it out there. I'm just curious as to what anyone has any ideas on that.
That's a good question, Matt. And I guess the question to you, Hugh, is when you do projects like this, how does it all roll out? So the intention to bring gas into that neighborhood, which I think is a great idea. I'm sure there's probably people who are very interested in it. But how is that information fed back to that community? Like, do you guys put out informational, educational packages or whatever to let all the residents in that community know, hey, gas might be coming into your area. If you're interested, this is what happens, blah, 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 blah. How does that work?
Yes, great question. So there's an initial canvassing period, we call it. I'm on the engineering side, but I work with the sales reps on the marketing, customer relations side to send out a generic flyer that has all the information about the Get Gas program. So the points I touched on were the 12-year window, the rider on your bill, all that sort of thing. That goes out to the project area. All those parcels, those 75 parcels, did receive a letter. Whether people see a bill, not a bill, a letter from UGI and physically go ahead and read all of it when they know they don't have gas. That's another point. But we do get fairly consistent feedback from a decent number of parcels, usually on these projects. So we do solicit that feedback. We try to render whether it's mostly positive. People are allowed to say, heck no, I don't want you installing on my property or around my property. We do solicit that as well. If there's enough of that, then usually we'll turn away. But we try to let the overall interest of the greater project region drive whether we pursue the project or not. So that happens on the upfront side. Then after there's interest, we move to the design phase. That's where we get some engineering and get the survey of the roads, which is kind of what I showed you, put together a project plan. And then we move towards authorizing the project. And in that authorization would be getting the permit from, whatever township or borough it is, which, would be South Whitehall here, and where we are assessing the financial, feasibility of the project. And then once that gets accepted, we'll send a letter to the residents saying, hey, we're coming in a couple of weeks. Here's your construction contact. Once we're out there, if you have complaints, call this number. If you want to hook up, call this number. We'll get a meter order set up for you. So that's kind of the notification process on our end. And yeah.
But at the end of the day, if this motion passes, it will be in UGI's discretion as to whether or not to install these lines in the right of way, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, this right now I'm only pursuing this this motion for this one project, working with your public works folks. They've been very gracious meeting with us and trying to be very pragmatic here and work within what you guys want, a shade tree and, all that kind of restoration, and identifying this as a project that there is interest, but there is also a big easement where there is not sidewalk that we can utilize. I mean, there is other areas of the township that we're not currently designing, but they could come up in the future. But for this particular project is the only one I'm asking for right now.
And I get that. And I listen, I'm a huge proponent of natural gas. I would love if my neighborhood had natural gas. I've never had, I love to cook, and I've never had actual gas stove to cook with. So I would love it. But at the end of the day, if you guys showed up to my front porch and said, hey, we're going to be digging up your front yard, I would be concerned about it, because I don't know that I have the money for the tapping fee, or I necessarily want to do that right now. And I just feel like we've advertised this ordinance modification to allow for the waiver, and while we're simultaneously trying to approve, or on the table to approve, a waiver that I don't think the public, the Southwell Township residents, will really be able to appreciate that, if, although the ordinance modification was advertised, that the immediate net result of it is that this whole neighborhood could have their front yard torn up without them really having a say in it. So that's my concern.
But
Can I ask a question, Hugh? So if you come in and you install the line, okay, which is what Matt's asking about with bringing up people's yards, but for the people who want to tap in, you go through the motions like you explained, but for the individuals who are not interested or who can't tap in, what happens? Do you restore their lawns? What happens? Like, how is that process? Because this isn't the first time you've done this. You do this in many communities. So how does that work?
Right.
There's some that want it and some that don't. So how does it work?
Correct. So just to be clear on the installation method here, it is horizontal directional drilling. So we are only digging a 3 foot by 3 foot at most, basically spot hole, when we cross a utility. So when we're talking about drilling parallel to the road through residents, under the properties, if they have a water service, we will spot that. If there's this project has electric overhead, so that's not a concern. So we're only talking about, on most properties, a 3 foot by 3 foot grass cut on a piece of their property. And that's if they have water. I think some of this project even has wells, but let's just assume there's at least a spot hole on each property. Yes, we will absolutely restore immediately the property with grass restoration. So we handle that. That's part of the project costs. So we try to restore it to as is conditions. So the reason why we do this is so that the impact is minimal to the property owners that either want it or don't want gas. Typically, they don't even notice that we're there, short of a little hole that's in front of their yard for a little bit that gets restored fairly quickly. That's not to say it's impossible that we hit a little rock here or there, but typically we're able to drill mostly all of these things and not impact residents too much.
how long does it usually take to restore it?
Excuse me, what was that?
Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
How long does it usually take to do the restoration, between the digging and the restoration? Is it a day, 2 days, a week?
I would say we're done within a week to 2 weeks, restoration wise. I mean, it depends on the time of the year.
For each individual person, for each individual property.
They'll come through and do like a couple streets at once. So probably 1 to 2 weeks after they dig the hole, maybe they'll come through and do the entire thing.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if there's another way to do this, and I'm not trying to be the squeaky wheel here, but I have real concern about us just kind of, I feel like rushing it through without giving the public an opportunity specifically that neighborhood. I mean, look, I get the benefit to the public, but people are going to be concerned. Look, Allentown's had its problems with gas. We know what happened with Lower Macungie when people now came in, just started clear cutting people's, property in the right of way. So I have serious problems about the idea of UGI just showing up to people's houses and saying, well, the township granted us, the right to do this. Then I don't think it's going to be clear to that development that this is what was really on the agenda tonight. So I'm not in favor of this, and I would be in favor of it if it was more, if it was, I don't want to say properly advertised, because I understand it doesn't have to be advertised, but I think that would be the right thing to do, just to make sure that this development knows what's going to happen in the front yards. So, just my 2 cents.
So Matt, you're not against the project. You just want to make sure that the residents in that neighborhood get proper notification and clearly understand the scope of the work that's going to be done.
Right.
Am I understanding that correctly? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So is that something, Hugh or Renee or Randy, is that something we can do that won't, that will still, support the project, but we want to make sure that the residents are fully aware of what's going to be happening or what could be happening? Is there something that we can do from a education piece, from a notification piece, letter, flyer, whatever?
If I can just speak to timing here, I mean, I'm not necessarily in any rush to go out and do this thing next week. So, whatever makes, you feel comfortable as far as letting residents know, I'm all for it. This, I designed this job back in January and been working with Randy and Jim Valley and the folks over there for a couple months. And we stopped construction for a little bit during the shutdown period. There's not really a rush here. I'm not trying to push anything. I just put on, this meeting agenda, and I just wanted to, give everyone the facts. And I'm certainly able to send anyone at the township, the letter that we will send the residents. If you would like me to do that, I can certainly forward you a copy of the letter if you want to notify them directly and attach that letter in some way, invite them to solicit their feedback. I'm open to anything. I'm not pushing to do this anytime soon. I'm just trying to do the due diligence of, for the residents that are interested, just to see if there's a way to move forward here.
Understood.
So, I had a question regarding.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Nope, I'm good.
You, just as a follow-up to the mailer, you had spoken about it earlier. I guess I misunderstood you. I thought you had said you already sent them to the residents in that area.
Sure. Yeah. We sent a canvassing notification, but like I said, whether everyone opened up the mail and read it completely is not necessarily guaranteed. But we sent it to everyone, months ago. So, and we've been.
What feedback have you gotten, if any, from that mailing, from that area?
Definitely some very interested residents, and as far as I know, no hard pushback. That's kind of why we're pursuing it still. But the sales rep that's been fielding the call said, people are still very, very interested, and I asked them multiple times to make sure they were, because I knew would have to get a waiver here and everything, and he said, yeah, they're still interested.
And what percentage of responses did you receive from the total number that were sent?
I'm not entirely sure about that.
Do you know how many residents live in that neighborhood where the proposed plan is?
I don't know population. I know there's 75 parcels we're reaching. I don't know what the occupancies are or anything.
Okay.
And all 75 households were notified?
They were sent a canvassing, yes.
All 75 of them. Yeah.
But they were notified of the potential for gas in the neighborhood, not of tonight's meeting to discuss it, correct?
Correct, and the project has not been approved yet, so we can't send the, hey, we're definitely coming out letter either, obviously, because we don't have a permit, we don't know the fees involved and all that, so that letter has not been sent. But yeah, we have canvassed, and they're not aware of to the extent of the meeting or the waiver required or anything like that.
Might I suggest that we since I think everybody, I don't want to speak for everybody, but it sounds to me like everybody likes the concept and idea, and it sounds like it's something that should be considered, but it's more of an education and making sure that we have the proper notification to the residents. So maybe what we need to have happen is another notification letter with maybe a little more detail explaining what would happen and how it would impact a resident, whether they got gas or didn't get gas. And then prior to that, have a public meeting where you can give another presentation, Hugh, and everybody can be aware of it and have the opportunity to listen.
Okay, so something we've done in the past is with these projects, because this type of thing does come up, and this isn't just in South Whitehall, this is other areas, is we used to have a public meeting out on site for these projects for people to learn about them and that sort of thing. They typically don't happen until they're actually approved. And I'm not sure if we're holding those because of the current situation, but that was our easiest kind of avenue to get visibility with the public. So I don't know if that's kind of what you're intending as far as a meeting with the residents. I can have a sales rep possibly set that up, though.
Matt, does that
I would be concerned about inviting people out, in the current environment. I honestly think if we just give them an opportunity at the next public meeting to know exactly what's happening and to speak out. Look, we may have no one come, right? But we can't say we didn't notify them. So I think just giving them that opportunity at the next public meeting would certainly satisfy my concerns.
I agree. I think that makes perfect sense, just to at least send a little more information out there, invite them to a public meeting if they have questions, and I agree.
Okay.
Does anybody else on the board have any other questions or thoughts on this?
Well, I would agree with Commissioner Mobilio. I think advertising this at the next on the next agenda, so that there's more detail for the that neighborhood to see that it's actually something that's going to affect them, would be a great idea.
Are there any questions from the public? I'm not seeing anything unless you see something on the chat, Steve. I'm not seeing anything.
I do not.
Okay, so it sounds to me, Hugh, that the consensus, Mike, I haven't heard from you, but assuming with no comment, that means you're in consensus, that we would hold off on this request for a waiver until our next meeting, giving some communications a chance and allowing the public to show up at the next meeting or have questions in between now and the next meeting, should they have any.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Hugh, very much. All right, next this evening under resolutions, we have a resolution for consideration and possible approval, granting final approval to a major plan entitled Hotel Hamilton. George, you want to present on this one? And I know we have some individuals here tonight who also will be presenting. I'll hand the floor over to you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'll be brief because I know they are here to present. I know they have some exhibits to show you. So this is the Hotel Hamilton plan. The request is to construct a 4,000 square foot bank, 14,500 square foot pharmacy, 100-room extended stay hotel. The proposal includes 192 parking spaces and the commitment to retain the existing King George Inn. The tract is zoned highway commercial. It's been a while since you've seen this request. This came in two pieces. If you recall from the presentation last week, come in as a preliminary or a final or a preliminary final. This came in as a preliminary originally back in February of 2016. At that time, the Board of Commissioners did grant preliminary plan approval subject to 3 waivers. There have been extension requests, obviously, since 2016 through 2017, 18, and 19, which leads us to today. Most recently, the Planning Commission heard the final plan request on February 20 of this year, and they did unanimously recommend final land development approval subject to 24 conditions and 1 additional waiver. That waiver being a request to waive the requirement for showing street tree easements and right-of-ways within 400 feet of the track. The Planning Commission did recommend this approval to you all, citing the detail provided in the final plan was sufficient. There was no zoning hearing board action for the plan, as it is compliant with zoning provisions. A couple of discussion items that did come out of the Planning Commission deliberation. The lengthy delays that have occurred, those 3 one-year extensions, were really related and primarily due to stormwater issues and the pursuit of mitigation strategies. At this point, it appears the applicant is working those matters and is recommending an on-site solution. It should be noted that the proposed stormwater system is designed such that it would tie into a proposed PennDOT culvert replacement project for this area once constructed. The use of the Kingsville Inn has not yet been identified, but certainly would be evaluated pursuant to zoning at such time a tenant or a use is decided upon. And then the last item, the Planning Commission did note that this property, not as often as it has in the past, continues to attract parking for commercial vehicles. So the board may want to suggest that the applicant become even more vigilant in the removal of those vehicles in the future. So with that, unless there's questions of staff, it's probably best to turn it over to the applicants and allow them to go ahead and present the case.
Thank you, George. Gentlemen? George, who do we have here tonight?
Yeah, Bud, we are
they
not
on?
hearing you. I can see.
You had Bill Malcolmus and Henry O'Toole, I heard. Are they there?
Bill and Henry, are you here?
Hey, George, is Bud Newton the one who's going to be speaking?
Yeah, but Bill, I only saw Bill and Henry.
Yeah, I do see Bud, Harold Newton Jr. He's
Okay.
on the screen.
Bud knows the project also. Yep.
Yeah, he was speaking. I'm not hearing him.
He's talking and we can't hear. That's his speakers on.
Bud, can you hear us?
Yes,
Looks like
Atul Patel.
Oh,
Okay.
there we go.
Bill Malcolmus. We're here.
Right, but I guess Bud's trying to talk. We can't hear him.
Yeah, Bill, I think Bud had a 4 or 5 slide presentation he wanted to give. I think he sent some slides over to Steve earlier.
Yeah, I do have 4 slides. Hey, Bud, one thing you can try is if you want to dial into the dial-in number, you can try that, or there's a little gear basically on the GoToMeeting that shows the selection of computer or phone. It might be the microphone's selection on there, maybe the wrong mic. Cannot hear you.
Maybe Atul or Bill, can you all speak to the project?
Can they hear us? I see them, but I don't know if they're hearing you, Randy or George. There they go. Bill, can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you, Atul, Henry, and Mr. Markamus. We're just waiting for Bud to solve his. Let's see that he can dial in. Can you hear us, Bud?
We can hear you guys. We just can't hear Bud.
And Bud's talking, he's saying something.
I'm trying to draw Bud's attention. Let me send the text to Bud that we can hear you and we want you.
I move that we deny the resolution. Time.
Guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, there. You sound far away, but we can hear you. Talk again, Bud.
Yes, that's overriding my headset microphone that I had. I don't know, let me try one more thing here.
I know, it may be
Put
not
it on
from the
speakerphone.
microphone.
Put it on speakerphone, Bud.
How's that?
There we go.
Oh, yay. That's it.
Okay.
Great.
Sorry about
Great.
that, folks. This system's been working fairly well, but I just tried to add the camera recently, and I may have tried to use the wrong microphone here. But,
No worries.
thank you, board. Thank you, Tori. Thank you, board. Thank you, staff, for the opportunity to talk about the project tonight. Let me get the speaker stuff off my screen. As George mentioned, this project has been going on for quite a while. We started it back in 2015, and I think you all know the site itself. This was formerly there was the Burger King on the site. There's a Carvel. You had the King George Inn, and there, at one time there was a mobile gas station next to it. And I think this is probably the first project that you've had under your historic overlay ordinance. And one of the intents of that, it was to save the King George Inn, which we've done, and which Atul has done a nice job of restoring it back to some of its original condition, getting rid of a lot of the additions and things that were added during the 70s and 80s that took away from the historic significance of the building. Also, as George has said, one of the major problems and one of the things that has held us up this long was the problem with the drainage across the site. I've been involved with that drainage for quite some time. When back in my PennDOT days in the early 80s, I was working on the Dorneyville bypass, and we wanted to correct the problem that PennDOT had with the 236-inch pipes underneath Cedar Crest Boulevard, because they can only handle about 100 cubic feet per second under the best of conditions. And we're getting you get almost 788 cubic feet per second of water during a 100-year storm out there. So you can see even on lower end storms, there's substantial flooding in the area. So PennDOT was going to take care of the problem with the bypass, but they ended up not being able to do it because of the historic structure, the King George Inn, and the historic village there, the Dorneyville Village. So one of the objectives that we had since the start of this project was to provide an easement and conveyance facilities that PennDOT could tie into. And that's what we're doing. We're running a culvert across the entire length of the site, and it's going to tie into what's going to discharge on our property and then go into the downstream system on the Cedar Point Shopping Center. And one of the big hangups we had is we were hoping to be able to tie directly into their culvert, which they installed when they built the shopping center. However, we dealt with several property owners. Every time we thought we had a solution with a property owner, they changed ownership. And now the current property owner has not been cooperative at all. So we came up with a solution that'll work even without their cooperation. So we're ready to move ahead with the project. We've had a lot of work. We've done a lot of work with staff. We've spent a lot of time more recently with Public Works to determine some other utility improvements. We are going to be replacing the sanitary sewer across the site, which is currently vitrified clay pipe, and we're going to be replacing that with new PVC piping. We've come up with a fairly unique condition to be able to collect the water that comes across Cedar Crest Boulevard. We've spent a lot of time with staff and your engineer talking about how properly to do that. We're going to have a concrete culvert that's going to have a grading system on the top of it for safety reasons that will be, if a vehicle does run off of Cedar Crest Boulevard, it will be vehicle safe and it will be bicycle safe, so people will be able to walk on it. So we've gone a long way. What you see in front of you is somebody's getting feedback. The rendering on the site shows the hotel that's proposed, the pharmacy or retail building, bank or credit union, and then the King George. And you can see with this, there will be sidewalk and street trees and substantially more vegetation around the property. So we think that, with the time that we spent on this project, we think is well spent. I think we have a very good project here as a result of input by staff and by your engineer and by Joe Zader's staff.
Thank you, Bud. Is there anything else that you gentlemen wanted to present this evening?
I think we're available to answer any questions that the board would have, because I believe there is a number of board members who weren't here when we presented this to the board the last time.
Very true. Yes, thank you, Bud. So that being said, are there any questions, comments, thoughts from the board on this particular project? It's been a long time in the making.
This is Mike Walsh. I'd simply like to hear from Tony Talarita to hear about, aside from the stormwater, what were the other top 1 or 2 engineering reviews that were done, or findings that were corrected in order for this move ahead?
Thanks, Mike. Stormwater was your main concern here. Obviously, like Bud said, the site is actually just situated in a position that receives a lot of water. We spent a lot of time with Bud and his and staff to solve that. In terms of other reviews, Public Works, and Bud mentioned Public Works put some time into the sewer, especially because that's a large sewer in the township, and the applicant has agreed to replace it through their site because of the existing condition of the pipe, and upsize it as well for future capacity. Traffic was all both are state roads, so it was all PennDOT related. So entrances, HOPs, everything does go through PennDOT for this project. And then general layout, I think the layout has been pretty static, Mike. If you don't mind me saying, for some time now, it was really just the engineering nuts and bolts, stormwater, sanitary, items like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions from the board on this particular project?
I had a question. I remember at the Planning Commission meeting, there was a comment or concern on the Cedar Crest Boulevard entrance, that there was an issue with the turning radii there, and a mountable curb. Has that been dealt with, Tony, satisfactorily from an engineering standpoint?
Correct. Yes. If you remember, the truck entering or driving over the mountable curb, the truck entrances have been moved to Hamilton Boulevard, and truck routes throughout the site have been provided, which can make their turning movements work.
If I could add,
remember I raised, oh, go ahead.
if I could add to what Tony was saying, PennDOT did have some concerns about traffic exiting the site, making a left turn onto Cedar Crest Boulevard. You could see somewhat here that there's times that you could get traffic that's queuing back from the shopping center driveway, the traffic light there, that could block the visibility of somebody wanting to turn left. So they did require that we restrict that access or exit to no left turns and the right turn only. So that was the reason why we had that concrete median in there. And it was a problem for WB 67, the very large interstate trucks, to be able to get in there. They would have had to drive over the mountable curb. So as a result, after the comments at the planning commission meeting, we moved the truck entrance to that first left in off of Hamilton Boulevard, just to the downstream of the bank entrance, between the bank and the retail building.
Thank you for that. And that was going to be my next question. I did raise that question during the planning commission meeting, that driveway onto Hamilton Boulevard. Historically, people have made a right turn out of there going the wrong direction on Hamilton. I know we had a discussion that you were going to work on signage or something there in the road to help direct away from that, because it's been going on for years. Has that been dealt with, Tony? Is that something that we've looked at?
Yeah, we're continuing to work with Bud for signage, but yes, they are going to sign it. They're going to put multiple signs. I can't say that everyone follows every sign on the road, but they'll put multiple signs on both entrances, or the entrance from Hamilton saying "Do not enter," "Wrong way," "One way," "Exit this way," things like that.
Yeah, we also changed the geometry there so that you have a configuration that you have channelization that will keep people, that'll lead people in the proper direction.
I'm getting double feedback. I don't know if anybody else does.
Yep.
Shall I repeat that, Tori?
If you would, please.
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be great, Bud. Thank you.
Yeah, we designed the intersections off of Hamilton and then also along Cedar Crest. Now they're channelized, they're angled in such a way that it's to encourage the vehicles to go the way you want them to go. That's one of the reasons why we did do the one-way driveways also. If you're coming down Hamilton from Cedar Crest, that first driveway is a left in, the second driveway is a left out, and there's a third driveway that's a left in on the far side of the hotel. But they're all going to be angled and channelized in such a way that it will help the motorists realize that that's the direction that they're supposed to go. And then, as Tony said, we're going to have substantial signing and stuff to help with that. But I know I've driven down the eastbound on Hamilton and had cars coming westbound on Hamilton, particularly in front of the other shopping center.
All right.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, this is Mike again. I'll ask on behalf of a citizen who came to a few meetings ago. He gave some comments about the future of the King George Inn, and I didn't hear the front end of this a few months ago. So what is the future for that building?
As of right now, it's been restored as best we can. We are looking at the possibility of adaptive reuse of the building. There's no potential users for it as of right now. But whatever we do, the facades of the building that face Hamilton and face Cedar Crest will not be changing. If we are going to adaptive reuse it, we have to add new bathrooms or elevators or other things that's going to be added to an addition that we're putting on the right side of the building.
And all that
How
would be
big of an-
ADA compliant? I'm sorry, I'll repeat. All that would be ADA compliant?
Yes, that's why that's one of the main reasons why you would have to put an addition on the building to be able to provide ADA access to the building.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions from the public on this particular topic?
I actually have a question. I thought it was previously said that the inn might be repurposed for office space. Is that no longer part of the plan?
That's a possibility, but we're not limiting, I believe Atul does not want to limit himself at this point in time. We don't have anybody that's expressed an interest as far as I know.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to ask questions from the public? Oh gosh, someone's doing feedback.
No, that's me. I'm trying to figure out how I could do this. There was feedback from my computer, and hold on, give me a second. Sorry.
Actually, yeah, a follow-up to that. So are there any tenants that have expressed interest in any of the other buildings on the property?
My understanding is Atul wanted to wait till he had final approval of the plan before he did any marketing. Originally, the hotel was, as you know, Atul's primary business is the hotel. So he was, he was planning to use that himself.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. That being said, do I hear a motion this evening granting final approval to a major plan entitled Hotel Hamilton?
I'll make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Oh my goodness gracious. So it sounds like we have a motion on the floor. I'm not sure who said that first. We'll go with Commissioner, I think I heard Commissioner Kelly. I'll make a second. Second by Commissioner Morgan, and we'll need a roll call vote, please.
Okay, it was Commissioner Kelly on the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Walk,
Aye.
Commissioner Mobilio,
Aye.
Commissioner Seton,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly.
And I want to thank the developer for his restoration of the King George Inn. It's beautiful.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye. Motion carries. Gentlemen, congratulations. I know this has been a long time coming. I think it will be a beautiful enhancement to that corridor, and thank you for all your hard work. Looking forward to seeing some great things happen. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, next this evening, we do have item B under resolutions has been tabled, so that will be showing up at a later date. So we'll move right to item C for consideration and possible action. This is a resolution in support of South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners to work with Lehigh County State House and State Senate delegation to further investigate the plan set forth called SR 20-1 Regional Prosperity District. Renee, would you like to introduce this?
Yeah, I'm actually going to turn it over to Mark Pinsley, the Lehigh County Controller. But this is a resolution that that Mark has brought forward and would like to present to the board tonight. So I will turn it over to Mark Pinsley.
Yep, thank you, Renee.
Welcome,
Thank you,
Mark.
board. Hi. So I'm sure you guys have seen, so this has been on our website for maybe 3 weeks, the controller website. Basically, we put out an opinion paper, due to the COVID environment, right? So we have a huge COVID economy that's coming that we're already in. We've seen, hardships both amongst our people as well as the governments within our, within Lehigh County. All the different municipalities are seeing different issues come up due to the COVID economy. And so we started exploring other counties that had had similar issues in the past. We had found Allegheny had a similar issue about 25 years ago. And then we based this, the Regional Prosperity District, based on something that we had seen out in Allegheny. The concept really is multiple fold. One is to provide some money to the county, some money to something called the Regional Prosperity District, which includes, things like the zoo, the arts, anything that the creative economy. So that would also might include Ben Franklin, who invests in local businesses. And then also 50% of the money would then go to municipalities to use for themselves. This is really the whole goal of this resolution is really to get support for a working group that we would have. This is, it's very early in the process to discuss these types of issues, like what are the alternatives to property tax and other taxes that may be coming due to the COVID economy. We've seen that state has very limited resources to assist the local municipalities. I think the CARES grant now has gone to counties that have over 500,000 people, which Lehigh County does not. So we will not be getting the large component of the CARE grant that's going to about 8 other counties. And then the federal government has started to slow their support for state and municipalities. In fact, the most recent one didn't have any money for state or local municipalities. And I think most recently we've had some people say that they don't think that there's going to be any support for state and local municipalities. So this is really just forward thinking and trying to figure out what we can do for both our citizens and for our municipalities. So we are hoping that South Whitehall may have some questions that I could answer, and then would vote to support this, and also to, excuse me, also to have somebody that would join the working group.
So Mark, what you presented, and I read through the documents, and they're extremely interesting. But are you suggesting that this is a springboard? This is something to help us try and open up our think tanks a little bit and try and determine what might be best for our community, because it could vary from community to community and the different dynamics of residents, because you have people who are on fixed incomes, you have people, the impact on some communities is going to be different than the impact on other communities. Have you thought of all of that and how that would be considered?
Right, yeah, so that, I mean, it is just a springboard for thinking. So the whole goal is to bring in the different municipalities and have them start talking about things like this. I mean, we did do a lot of research on this. It wasn't something that we just threw together. But that does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that it's, in any final form or that anybody would agree with it necessarily. However, what we did see is in Allegheny, for example, they issued a 1% sales tax back in, I guess, 25 years ago. What some of the municipalities have done is they've used it to stop new property tax. So I believe in 20 years, I need to verify this, but I believe in 20 years, municipalities within Allegheny County have not had to raise their property tax. They've been able to use the sales tax in lieu of property tax, which, as you can imagine, has been good for those that are on fixed incomes or poor.
Right.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to just add to that is that, I've had an opportunity to look at this. I've talked to Comptroller Pinsley about this. I don't need to tell anyone on this line that we're in a unique circumstance. There's been Pennsylvanians have had a tough go of it property tax-wise for a long time. It's been a big issue. I think now is the time for creative ideas. I mean, we're looking at a environment economically, among other ways, that in the future that's unknown. Nobody really can tell what's going to happen. I think doing business as usual, doing things the way they've always been done, is probably the worst thing we could do right now. We need to be able to forecast and predict to some degree of certainty what our budget's going to look like next year. And I can tell you, I'm sure my fellow commissioners can tell you that, we're almost certainly going to have a shortfall next year. Thorny Park is not going to be contributing the same amount of money. We're not going to get the same amount of money across the board in taxes. So we need to figure out, can we do both a property tax freeze and help stimulate and make sure that our community is not just surviving, but thriving. And I'll tell you this, that while I don't necessarily support any increases in taxes, I love the idea of getting the local leaders and officials, including state reps and state senators, together to brainstorm this thing, because there is no, if anyone tells you that they have the solution for the problem, they're crazy, because nobody knows. So the more people we get in the room putting ideas forward, I think it can only be a benefit. So I fully support it. I will not agree or sign on to any which way as far as tax increases go, because I want to see the whole picture to make sure that we're benefiting the residents as well as coming up with a plan forward. So I think it's a great idea, and just getting a lot of people who care in the room at the same time, I think you can't go wrong with that. That's really all we're voting on tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah. To be clear, yeah, we're not voting on a tax. We're voting on a discussion, being a part of the discussion. Yeah.
Mark, I think what's really great about this, I had read through it in detail as well, is the fact that I think we can't sit back and wait for whether it be our state or even our federal government to, put things in place for support. We have to start taking care of things from the ground level up. And, if we get extra support from a state or federal level, that's great, but we can't just rely on that. So I do like that, the thought of thinking outside the box, being, as proactive as possible to try and come up with ways to make our, to become more sustainable, especially in light of the pandemic. So, I agree with what you said, Matt. I'm all for it. I think it's going to be great to get a bunch of people in a room and just really kind of brainstorm and have a think tank on what we can do that, is going to have as little impact as possible on our residents, but ultimately will support them and make our community sustainable for the long run.
Thank you.
Are there questions or comments from the board on this particular topic? The information that Mark has provided, before I go to the public for questions or comments?
Yes, I had a question for Mark. What has been the other townships in the county, the reaction to this plan to date?
So far, very positive. I mean, most people want to get involved. The ones that I've had the most conversations with so far have been Slatington, Fountain Hill, Albertus, Whitehall, and we're in discussions with Allentown. Allentown just announced today that they have an $8 million hole in their budget. So you can imagine that they're looking for ways to beyond property tax to solve that problem.
So those 5 municipalities, well, one's a city, but so they've already passed resolutions and they're already part of this plan?
Yeah, everything is early. So I've had discussions with all of them. I think that Slatington has it on their agenda for their next meeting, which I believe is in June. I'm not sure exactly what date. I don't know. It was supposed to be on Fountain Hill's agenda today, but I could only go to one meeting, so I don't know whether it was on. I don't know whether they had it without me, but I tend to doubt it. Allentown has it on June 3rd. And I'm not sure about Albertus and Whitehall at this moment.
And then secondly, I know Allegheny County, I looked them up there in
the Pittsburgh area.
End of the state. Right. So is there a county closer to us that we can use more comparatively that has done something successfully when we start talking about thinking out of the box?
No, I think that there's only 2 counties that have requested the ability to have, in this particular instance, we're talking about a sales tax. That was Allegheny, and that was about 25 years ago, and Philadelphia, and I'm not sure how long ago they did it, but they charge a 2% sales tax, where Allegheny charges a 1% sales tax. Now, Allegheny, I used Allegheny as the model. I haven't really dug into Philadelphia, to be honest. Allegheny, it was very successful. As I'm sure you looked at when you looked up, you probably saw that.
I did, yes.
Mark,
I
what did
didn't
you
look
say
at the
about,
specifics, but
I'm sorry, Mark, what'd you say about Allegheny County? What'd you say about their property taxes?
I believe it's 20 years. I need to verify that, that the municipalities have not had to raise their property tax in 20 years.
And again, I think that the concept isn't necessarily that this would be the final decision. I think this is a concept to grow off of and decide what's best for our community and what works best for the dynamics that we have. So it really is just opening up conversation and trying to get something in motion.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the things that we need to explore, but that I know that they found in Allegheny, and I believe in Philadelphia as well, is, 25%, they found that 25% of the sales tax comes from outside of the county. So people that come into the county spend money, obviously, and they bring in 25% of that sales tax. So that would obviously be good for, for us.
One thing I want to add to this is that there's, as it's important for us to pass the resolution itself, just to identify that we want to be a part of the working group. Obviously, we're not agreeing to any kind of anything. I think it's important to stress that this needs to be a bipartisan issue, and not just. And I don't just mean the resolution agreeing to be part of the working group, but I mean at the end of the day, what I can never agree to or sign on to is some sort of agreement whereby it's down party lines where it's 90% Democrats all agreeing to do one thing and just bare bones participation. I mean, I think speaking with Mark, I know that's his intention to bring in both Democrat and Republican state lawmakers, representatives, senators. I mean, hopefully we can have them all on board, but at a minimum, we should be looking at bipartisan support from municipalities, local leaders, to make sure that this is not just a wish list, one side or the other, but that we can all agree that this is a beneficial thing. And I know that that's his intention, and I just want to assure everyone who's on this call and whoever is concerned about this that my intention is to only sign on to any kind of plan that would involve strong bipartisan support.
Yeah, just if I could just add to that as well, it's not like, just to be clear, ultimately the decision has to be made at the state level. So this is support for a document that we would potentially send to the state, whatever that looks like. And obviously the state is primarily Republican anyway. So, you have to get it past a Republican House and Senate.
So just a follow-up question then, since this is a state issue, what action has already been taken at the state level to speak to the state legislators regarding this issue and their understanding of state?
Yeah, I have not talked to state legislators at this moment, because if there's not support at the municipal level, there's really no point in going to the state level.
So is there support at the county level already?
Yes.
So the county commission's already voted on this?
No, but I have support at the county level. I have people, I have commissioners that want to be on the board, excuse me, not on the board, but on the working group.
This is Mike Welk. Mark, thank you for the leadership role you've played in this. It seems to me like there's a backdrop to this proposal at the state level. I'm not terribly current, so that's why I'm going to ask the question. I know it's been there's been active proposals and bills for some time to either totally eliminate the school property tax, and there's different options of if not doing that entirely, then partially, and trade-offs with other taxes. I think the sales tax. I actually just tried to find current information online while we were discussing this, and I failed. So could you just give us a few words about that backdrop? Because I think decisions around this, you have to consider that backdrop, which hasn't come to any finalization yet.
Yeah, so I can give you the backdrop. I think it started back with Corbett initially, his goal was to completely eliminate school property tax and replace it with sales tax, which basically would never work in the sense that, not that it would never work, but it would never have been agreed upon because it caused the sales tax to more than double in order to replace the property tax. So it was kind of a non-starter. So then they started mixing different taxes along with the sales tax. So I think that there was an earnings income tax. They tried doing, I think, some other kind of sin tax. I can't remember what other proposals have been put forth. It regularly fails. I mean, I don't think that it's in the, I don't think it's in the current year's whatever they're, I'm not sure that it's on the Senate side nor on the House side currently. I haven't seen it. But that was the goal, is that they had tried to see if they could get rid of the school property tax with a sales tax. But it's just too big it's too big of an elephant. The school sales tax, I mean.
So like as a quick follow-up, how would you see these discussions, you know, in the framework you described to us, working with, you know, alongside or within the context of the larger state taxes that haven't been resolved yet?
Well, you have to remember, like Philadelphia and Allegheny have already done this. So there's already precedent for doing exactly what we're doing. And if there's an additional sales tax, it's going to be across the board to everyone. It's not going to matter whether we're charging 7% or 6%. Everybody then is going to go up by, you know, whatever percentage it is that the state agrees upon, that Harrisburg agrees on. So like if they went up to 10%, all of a sudden Philadelphians would be paying 12% and Alleghenians would be paying 11%. And if this was the path that we wanted to go, which I'm not saying that it is, it's just a discussion piece, then we would also be paying 11%.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And this is a perfect I don't say segue, but it's a perfect example of the point of the resolution is to do exactly what we're doing right now, and that's to hammer out the details of it. It's not to, you know, hey, this is a show of support for a tax increase from South Wales Township. That is not at all what it's for, because we haven't even come close to identifying whether it makes sense, whether we can keep property taxes, you know, neutral or reduce them. So this is not a, hey, listen, everyone vote on this and then we're going to raise taxes. It is literally a, can we agree to sit down in a room with other municipalities and try to come up with some kind of consensus as to whether it will make sense for us to increase one tax in order to maintain or decrease another tax. I mean, this is not a, no one's wallet is going to be affected by any decision tonight.
So along those lines, then, Commissioner Mobilio, just out of curiosity, or maybe Mr. Pinsley, if we're talking about getting everyone in a room to talk about this, I guess I'm curious why we're going through a resolution instead of forming a committee and beginning a conversation just as a county.
It's a show of support.
Okay, so that's really what it is. It's to show a commitment to the discussion. Are there any other comments or questions from the board? I know we have some comments from the public, so if we're, Steve, I can't see the chat room. Is there somebody who had a comment? I think something came in.
Yes, Mr. Chai has a one comment, maybe one question. I think the citizens need to weigh in on this before the BOC votes on this matter. This second one, which is a question, have the county commissioners given bipartisan support for this?
I mean, right now, probably the greatest proponent is Percy, who's Republican.
And then I also, I'm going to invite the Hodges. I don't know if it's Monica or her husband that would like to speak. If you'd like to speak.
Hi, it's both of us here, but this is my question. Hi, Mr. Pinsley. I have a quick question for you. You mentioned a few municipalities that were interested. I think you said Albertus, Whitehall, I believe, Slatington. Have you spoken with more municipalities? And if you have, what is their reason for not joining as or for not giving their support as the other municipalities you mentioned have given their support? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so I've sent an email out to all municipalities. Some have responded, like the ones that I discussed, and some have not. And at this moment, there's only one of me, so I just haven't had a chance to get to the rest. But I haven't had anybody that has been negative towards this issue yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I mean, I think to be fair, I think it's hard for any one board to be the first, right? So, my feeling, speaking with Mark and, hearing that the progress we've made, at least talking with other municipalities, is, it's once you get the first domino to fall, then other people will want to join in because it seems like something that makes sense, right? So, even if we didn't pass this tonight, like Mark said, Fountain Hill, Slatington, they all have it on their agenda. And again, this is, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but the reality is it's literally just a show of support to talk, have a conversation. So at the end of the day, even if a majority of this board would vote in favor of this and then somehow vote in favor of whatever came out of that working group, it still wouldn't mean anything because we still need the state to approve it. So as soon as we get through get state support, state legislators, state senators, which means they're putting their political lives at stake and they're going through the numbers, they're running it through their staff, their committees, they're doing everything they can. So this is nothing more than hey, let's us at the local level try to come up with solutions that maybe our state legislature hasn't been able to come up with yet, and see what happens.
Commissioners, I'd like to invite Lee Salt would like to comment. Lee.
Thank you, Steve. I thank you for the opportunity to comment, Commissioner Pinsley and Commissioner Mobilio. A couple things that Commissioner Mobilio said that, yes, we won't get Dorney Park and Wildwood Kingdom that income as much as we normally would. And yes, we don't know what's going to come out of this COVID-19 and what our economy is going to look like in the future. But a couple of things I didn't know about this. I just reading this over briefly now. I think it's a great idea. We need to talk and to see how we can come out of this and how we can solidify and stabilize our economy and hopefully our taxpayer dollars a little bit better. But I hate to say that it's always comes down to the taxpayer that's always getting tax increases. And yes, this might be a way to make our taxes in the long term more stable. But the question, a couple of things, just reading this, and I guess Commissioner Pinsley, is this something that I noticed that there was things at the bottom of this where it can be put towards certain things. Would the municipalities have the ability to say that we're going to take this money and put it towards property tax as compared to something else? Is that left up to municipalities, or is it left up to what the law says?
Well, what Allegheny did was leave it up to the municipalities. I mean, I would support leaving it up to the municipalities. Some municipalities could certainly take whatever money they would get from this and actually lower property tax if they chose to do that.
Okay, so I know Commissioner Mobilio and Commissioner Walk had also talked about introducing a tax to the South Whitehall Township to also for homeland preservation. So that's another thing, thinking about those. I think it's a good idea these things are discussed, and I think that's a good idea, but I just hate to see it always go back on the taxpayer to foot the bill to hopefully save the taxpayers some money. It just sometimes is catch-22.
Yeah,
thank you.
There's no doubt.
Lee, you're absolutely right about that, and I can tell you that I was very proud to have been working with Commissioner Walk and diligently working with him. These people that come time into We all did, but Mike Wolf especially really dedicated himself to working on that homeland preservation issue. And I'm sorry to say that with the COVID interference, it's not something that's likely to be able to be had this year. So you're not likely to see any kind of ballot initiative referendum that's going to increase any kind of earned income tax. So you will not see that from us for that initiative. Hopefully we can revisit that next year. You're stuck with me, Mike, and Diane at least for the next 4 years, so we have a lot more to work on. But the reality is you're not going to see an EIT increase this year for homeland preservation, unfortunately. So that's not something that you should be concerned about.
Okay, but it's something in the future we, would look at, and I think I support that. I think that's a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I'm just, just thinking about how many more taxes we can incur to save money on taxes.
Absolutely, and the EIT proposal that we had been discussing, working on, would have been a referendum, which basically means you as a taxpayer would have the opportunity to vote yes or no on it. So this was not a, unilaterally imposed from the township tax. The EIT would have been a leave it up to the public to decide whether they wanted this tax or not. And that's my expectation is that, and that's the only way I would support an increase in the EIT for homeland preservation would be at the taxpayers' vote. So if taxpayers choose not to vote in favor of it next year or whenever it is that we can bring it before you guys, then it's in your hands. So it's a little bit different scenario. So, but I appreciate your concern.
Well, thank you very much.
This is Mike Wolf. So tying a few things together, what Commissioner Mobilio just said in response to Lee Solt and John Chaz said earlier, he'd like to see an opportunity for some citizen feedback. How could we do that? How could we do something with a short turnaround to get more citizen feedback within the township about this?
I mean, I would leave that to you guys. You have many ways to communicate with your citizens, I suppose. You have your website, you have a whole bunch of things that you could use.
I think you need to start the group first, and then, certainly, I think we've got the cart before the horse. I think that the intention of all of this, if I'm understanding it correctly, is to get a group together to start brainstorming and getting some ideas, and then at that point, you would pull in for, public input and make sure that the residents were involved. But to do something real right now, I don't know if you have something solid in front of you to use, because again, this is sounds like a springboard, not a decision.
Well, and right, even if that working group, even if the result of that working group, which I would never support this, but I'm just playing devil's advocate, if the result of that working group was that the proposal was to raise the sales tax, institute a countywide sales tax of 1%, raise the CIT 0.5%, and not promise to reduce taxes, not promise to reduce property taxes, even if that was the net outcome of that working group, it would still be the board. It would still be the board's requirement to decide whether to approve proposing that to the state. So at the end of the day, the public is going to have the ultimate say on whether whatever the working group generates as far as the plan is concerned makes sense that they would support it. And I'll tell you now, and I'll put that on the record, that I'm not going to support any plan that raises taxes without having some mechanism by which we can lower other taxes or stabilize other taxes.
So are there any other questions or comments regarding this topic from the public?
Mr. Chair just asked another question. Would citizens rather than politicians be on the group?
Yes, absolutely.
I think
we already.
Yeah,
we already have.
Perfect.
Yeah. We've already had citizens express interest of being on.
Okay, so,
I'm sorry, may I ask one more question, just to follow up, Commissioner Mobilio, I appreciate what you just stated about not being willing to support an increase in the local sales tax if it didn't also mean some type of reduction in another tax. But so my question following up on that to Mark Pinsley, when Allegheny instituted theirs 25 years ago, they're not in a place where we are today, which is very uncertain as a nation, as a state, as a county, certainly all the way down to our township. We're facing unprecedented times that we don't know where the end of it will be yet or what the potential impact will be across the board. So how do we get a crystal ball out and say that we won't have to raise taxes locally because of this when the unknown is the impact of this pandemic? I mean, that's something that I agree with Commissioner Mobilio. It's a unprecedented times, and certainly.
I'm not suggesting whether you will or won't have to raise taxes. What this proposal, the goal of this proposal is to provide alternative methods in some ways, right? So right now, your primary tax that you raise is property tax. I mean, obviously there's also an EIT, but property tax is the majority of the income that you have. You know, so at the end, you know, if Dorney Park doesn't open this year, you have what, a $1.2 million hole or something large like that, right? And obviously new property isn't coming online that was expected or budgeted for. So I imagine at the end of this year, you guys are going to have to be looking at either cutting services or raising taxes. And that has nothing to do with this proposal, other than my hope is in the future that if you have to make that decision, that you have an alternative, which would be, in this particular example, sales tax that's coming in from hopefully not just Lehigh County, but 25% outside of the county.
Well, and just to chime in with that real quick is that, you know, the difference between property taxes and sales tax is if you are a homeowner, your property tax, you got to pay it no matter what, right? At the end of the day, if you don't pay your property taxes, the municipality puts a lien on your property, foreclose, whatever they want to do, right? Sales tax, you can choose not to buy additional things, right? So the food, there's no sales tax on clothing, I think, right? No sales tax on it. You can choose to reduce your consumption, okay, if it's a matter of, you know, financial concern, but you can't ever not pay your municipal tax. So one of the benefits of a higher sales tax but stabilized or lower property taxes is that at the end of the day, you can control your own contribution towards the tax revenue of the township with a higher sales tax, but you can't do that with a property tax.
okay. Any other questions or comments? Are we in a position to hear a motion to move forward with this development of a working group for further discussion and investigation to talk about the concept of a regional prosperity district?
I will make the motion to, yep, I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Pinsley. We have a second from Commissioner Seton. From Commissioner Seton. Could I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Commissioner Walk.
I'd like to qualify my vote. First of all, I want to thank Mark Pinsley again for the leadership in doing this. I've written down several factors and several things that we've talked about, just about all of them. This isn't black and white. To me, it's like a 60-40, you know, decision. Which way do you lean today? And being fiscally conservative, like you've seen previously, and maybe I just don't grasp the concept entirely. I'd like to take more time to look at it. So I'm going to vote no. It's not black and white. It isn't that I wouldn't or couldn't come back and support this sometime in the future.
Okay. Commissioner Mobilio,
Aye.
Commissioner Seton,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly.
I am not going to support this at this time. I'm feeling very unsure as a commissioner in my first term in the middle of a COVID, who also serves on the finance committee, that I'm trying to be fiercely protective of our citizens tax-wise. And because we're not on the other side of this, it's just not something that I can support at this time. So unfortunately, I have to vote no.
Commissioner Morgan.
I vote yes for, I think, the opposite reason. I think that this shows initiative to try and look at ways to manage taxes and costs. So I do vote yes.
And can I just add to that? I want to add to that, and that's that this is, because we're in an unprecedented time, this is a time to be bold. This is the time to look for bold decisions, bold ideas. I don't think we can hide underneath a rock and say, well, let's just hide here until the tragedy or the virus passes us. We need to get out in front of this because no one else is going to do it for us. No one else is going to sign a check. Certainly not the federal government. No one's going to send us money to say, here's what you need to go do. Here's your payment. Now go take care of your constituents. You need to get out there and get out in front of it. So I think the idea of just creating a working group to talk about it is there's literally no harm in it. So I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get more support to just create basically a group of like-minded individuals to chat about it, but it is what it is.
Well,
I like to make,
motion carries.
I like to make just one more. Thanks. One more comment. You know, we've had this sort of situation before. We voted from this point forward. I support the fact that we're moving forward, and the township has supported the study. And I will speak positively about the fact that we've moved forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, thank you for your work on this and for presenting tonight. And I think, you know, between, you know, Commissioner Seton and Mobilio and myself, we can try and figure out who would best represent, and maybe it would be a combination of different people as far as a representative for discussions.
That would be great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your guys' support.
You got it. Thank you. Have a great night. All right. Next on the agenda this evening, we will be moving to our motion section. We have a motion for consideration and possible action. It's a motion to proceed with the engagement of Granicus for a website, agenda management, and video streaming. Renee, sounds exciting.
Thank you. You may recall over the past several months, I label us the web redesign team. Myself, along with Dave Manhart, Randy Cope, Tracy Fainel, and myself have been working and evaluating different vendors. We initially started out evaluating just website vendors, but in that search for website vendor, we found some different vendors who provide a complete communication system, a complete total government solution that incorporates website along with agenda management, which we use, but with a different vendor, that provides a package that just incorporates and allows us to communicate in a much more efficient and quick manner with the residents of South Whitehall Township. So tonight we are going to hear, we have representatives from Granicus on the line. We're going to hear from them. But essentially what we would like to do is to engage and move forward with Granicus, which would include a website redesign. It would include a new agenda management software, and it would also include something that we don't currently have, which is video streaming. And they're going to show you some, it's a pretty slick software for the streaming and ways to search things that will take you to direct spots in video. The expense for Granicus, there is a first year one-time fee and some subscriptions for a total of approximately $21,200 would be our first year expense. And subsequent years, again, are comparable to what we are currently paying for our current website and board doc software subscription. So at the year 5 of an engagement, we would only be 17% over what we're currently paying. And that again includes the third solution, which is video. When we did the analysis, there was 14 different criteria that we had utilized in evaluating the different vendors that we looked for. I'm not going to read all 14 of them. They were included in the packet. But we've heard you, and ease of citizens use and ability to find information more easily and quickly was a major factor in recommending Granicus. I don't know, Randy, Dave, do you have anything you want to add before we turn it over to Granicus?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Renee, but there's also some benefits to the back end of this for staff, updating the site more easily, especially making sure that what we're designing, behind the scenes before we make it go live is actually going to work on your mobile device or your iPad or tablet, whatever you might have, which we currently lack right now, which has been frustrating when trying to update our website. So that's one other key element that makes this software nice.
All right. If we don't have anything else, if we can turn it over to Granicus, I believe Dustin Brinkman is going to speak for Granicus. I can turn it over to Dustin, and actually, I believe, Dustin, we're going to give you controls to the screen.
Okay, that sounds great. Commissioners, thank you for, I appreciate it. Commissioners, thank you for your time tonight. My name is Dustin Brinkman. I'm the Director of Sales here at Granicus for our digital services products. And our team has had the pleasure of working with your staff on this project for some time now, walking through your needs and what really is going to impact residents, business owners, and key stakeholders in the township. First, I want to, again, I said thank you, but I'm also a council member in my small town in Kansas, so the things that you're talking about, I'll be talking about next week. So the discussion on budget was very interesting to follow. So thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. So there are a few key things that I always like to talk about when we talk about our solutions. First of all, we are trusted by over 4,000 government agencies nationwide. We have presence from the federal government all the way down to the smallest local municipalities of cities and counties, or cities and towns of less than 1,000. So we serve 16 of the 17 federal agency or federal executive agencies, multiple townships, counties, and cities in Pennsylvania, as well as the state of Pennsylvania for multiple sources. So a couple of things that really stood out when we were talking to your staff. One, as Renee mentioned there, it really revolves around your site visitors, of how they can leverage the data and information you provide in a self-service manner. Especially in these days, you can't walk into the township hall. It may be harder to call in, if you have folks working from home. We want to make sure it's very easy. So our solutions across the board that we've proposed to you will certainly do that. We also want to make sure that we're proactively reaching out to your stakeholders and your visitors. People don't come necessarily to township websites like you would just pick up the Sunday newspaper. We want to hit them where they're at. So tools built in with our system will allow your staff to do that much easier, including a send agenda functionality, which people will be able to sign up and get notification of agenda and minutes postings, as well as social media integration tools, calendar notifications, news notifications, all built in. So it acts as a single update point for your staff. We also want to make sure that these tools are fully compliant or with disability, the ADA requirements and the WCAG 2.0 requirements that are required. And finally, as was mentioned, we want to make sure it's really easy for your staff to continue to update it. So it doesn't have to go through a choke point. It can be updated very quickly and easily. So when we talk about our projects, they all really come with the idea of customer experience. And while we're proposing multiple products across our set here, it's going to be one experience for your resident. Whether they're looking at an agenda, a video, trying to sign up for some sort of recreation item, or just look at what's happening. Maybe some of the things that you're talking about tonight with the working group on that you've just discussed, you can post that material very easily. So your residents are quickly and easily notified of exactly what's going on. We want to make sure it's very upfront to them. So a lot of people talk about a customer experience, and that becomes the holistic approach. So even when they're walking into Township Hall, which hopefully they can do soon, or calling in, we want to make sure I'm sure, want to make that as seamless as possible. We want to make sure the digital side of that is absolutely flawless for you. So our team's going to take you through that. And we really, working with so many government agencies, we understand how to help you through that. And we can bring some really good real-life examples of how to optimize some things digitally for your residents. Finally, again, this kind of becomes both the staff side, but also the resident side as well. We want to make sure that material is posted everywhere, but it lives in one spot. So there's a single source of truth. So the Granicus system really acts as a hub of the wheel, right? So we're constantly pushing out content and information that was created by your staff very easily with a single action. So for example, maybe I'm going to post a news item, something about the working group findings that you just had. It's going to make it really easy for you to publish that to the website, goes out to any kind of mobile users that are there. It's going to be drive that out to social media, and then also any email or text messages folks that have signed up as well. So with one action, a staff member can reach out in 8 to 10 different ways, depending on how you have it set up. It becomes incredibly easy for you to continue to manage that. So as a high level, that's kind of what we're looking at. I did want to show you just real quick a couple of examples of some folks that we work with. I'm going to start, and both of these are out of state, but I think they're more relevant to kind of what you're looking for. So I want to show you, first of all, Shoreview, Michigan. A couple of things. Anyone can build a really nice website. You can build one on any platform very quickly and easily. Where we come into play is we work directly with your staff to, one, utilize data and informed decisions to really understand what residents and business owners are trying to do on the website. We then want to optimize their journey throughout that entire process. So for example, here in Shoreview, you may notice some key call to action icons, sliders that are going to draw attention to different things. This is all completely managed by your staff in a very easy to use solution. But think of things like search and navigation, or even as a resident, maybe I don't know what department handles what I'm trying to do. I go to this I want to, which is going to follow you everywhere within the screen. And then it's going to step through some things that are very straightforward, like a resident would think. So, hey, I want to sign up for rec programs. Within one click, I can get there and find that information very quickly. There's multiple ways to get to that material all across the site. So lots of things within the website that can certainly be there. We're going to tailor it, especially for South Whitehall Township. This isn't just a cookie cutter that we're going to throw out there for you. We do data research with you and really understand how it fits in with your residents, but then also integrating in agenda management and video solutions that are here. So looking at Greenbelt, Maryland is a customer of ours for some time, and you can see that their agendas and minutes go back to 2009 within the system. A couple of things here. You'll notice at the top, a resident can very easily sign up, drop their email address in here, and anytime this is updated, it's going to send out that notification to them. So when you post an agenda or you have a change to a meeting, they're going to know immediately. Again, with one action done by the management of the staff, by staff. You're also going to notice things like our search feature in here. So if I'm a resident, and I think you guys had something with a playground you talked about earlier. So if I look at playground here, we search, and it's going to start pulling up multiple different things. If you're captioning your items, it's going to look for captions. It's going to look for items in agendas. You can go directly to that particular part in the video with just a single click. So you can really kind of get an idea of what the power is here for the resident. And then if we look at the video solution as a whole, we look here at Greenbelt. It's going to not only embed your video, you'll have your agendas and minutes here. So you'll notice that this is an older meeting because I wanted to show you that there are minutes embedded directly in here. So in a document, searchable format. But then if I want to watch the video, it's as simple, obviously, as playing. You'll start seeing it. You can skip around, which makes it is a little bit better, but what's really great is when you start indexing it. And I want to look for a very specific thing. For example, the Firefly Sanctuary. I can click that, and it's going to take me directly to that jump point within the meeting. So any site visitors, residents, you all that want to review what happened in a meeting, within just a couple of clicks, you can get right to where it was at. So this, again, incredibly easy for staff to manage. Tie this directly back to your agenda and minutes, so it makes it very straightforward and easy. Finally, on your end, as somebody that sits behind the dais as well, and I don't know how many of you like the paper packets. That's a great way to go. I'm a digital guy. I like to have everything on my iPad. We have tools for you as well called iLegislate that you can download, have the agenda, everything in there, all of your attachments, write on it, make your own notes, and it becomes private to you. So lots of options there for you. And I know there's a lot of different pieces in there, but I would certainly open it up to any questions that you all have.
Oh, Dustin, that sounds amazing. Thank you for that presentation. Are there any questions or comments from the board on this Granicus application?
Yeah, this is Mike Walk. I have just a few. I mean, first for Renee, Renee, you highlighted there was 14 criteria that was put together a few weeks ago. I think I referred to the same thing as basically a functional spec. Could you simply confirm? I appreciate the gentleman highlighted, the citizen user friendliness, but could you confirm that the entire staff has had input and views that this would have functionality that is required for the staff?
The staff who use the website and who do the agenda management, all of those have had that, have seen the product. As I had stated earlier, there was a group of individuals who worked on the project.
Okay, thank you. And for the gentleman, you said something that sounded like all data will reside in one place. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Each piece of data.
Yeah, this is a hosted solution. Yeah, so it's a fully hosted solution that is software as a service. So all of the data would reside within the Granicus environment. We have multiple levels of security as well as certifications to verify that as well, including all the way up to FedRAMP certification based upon our relationship with the federal government and NIST certifications, which generally are incredibly strong for our particular sector.
Okay. One more quick one. You highlight it's ADA compliant or friendly. Does that include for people who are blind and visually impaired?
That's correct. So when the website is handed to you, we run multiple scans, multiple tests throughout the process to make sure that that's done. The system itself has a lot of different guardrails in it to make sure that you continue to write content that is accessible. And we also do a writing accessible content for the web training with any SAP users as well, because there are certain things that they have to do to keep that in compliance. Our team will also do proactive scans with you and provide that, that information upon request as well.
Okay. And last question. Could you just say a few words about what you foresee as a transition? If you build a new system, what do you see as the transition from our current application over to the new design?
Yeah, certainly. So it would certainly be a phased approach that we take. So things like the agenda management and video solutions, they'll have a project team that will take them through that, migrating data if necessary, creating the agenda templates, the minutes templates to meet the needs of your particular community, and then starting to get that installed. That process goes forward, as we're also building the website. The website project tends to run somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 months. We go through multiple phases of that project where our team works directly with staff to make sure we're identifying the needs of your community and what makes it different, and how do we optimize those things. So the process is incredibly well vetted out as we've done thousands of these projects. And so the project management team works directly with you all to make sure that things go smoothly and roll out to your community in the most effective way.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment for anyone who's listening and for the edification of the fellow board members. I, small business owner, I've been intimately involved in all the websites that's been created for my website, for local businesses that I've started, and I tell you that I'm incredibly impressed with this operation, with this layout. I mean, I would love to be able to afford to put this kind of system into place for my business, because it is incredibly intuitive from what I can tell. It is incredibly user friendly. I think the public will be thrilled with their ability to easily access information, and I'm very impressed. I'm glad that the work that Renee and the staff put into vetting you guys and going through the proposals and ending up with this product. I'm incredibly impressed, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the end product.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Thanks, Matt.
Agreed.
I have a question. I don't know if it's Renee or, sorry. On one of the websites that was used for display, I thought it said something about a payment. So I know we're working with Munis to get that launched, and is this going to take the place of that as well?
I will answer. So in terms of credit cards, that's kind of separate. That would reside on the website for a link to pay credit cards. Credit card gateway, different avenue, but this website will integrate with Munis Citizen Self-Service, which will be the tool for payment.
Okay. And then we have that other Water Smart software that we're using as well. Does this integrate with that as well?
Yes, it will direct to those customer portals.
And are we in a contract still with board docs, or what has been our
board docs
with them?
is a 1-year contract. We just need a 30-day notice of it, and they'll prorate the bill. Our board docs renewal comes in the fall. So
thank you.
Yep.
I thought of one more question. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I can't.
So Renee, who will either serve as the township project manager or the functional manager, who's the single point of contact with the supplier manager?
Who's the point of contact for Granicus?
Yeah, within the township.
Well, it would be our current team. We have a team set up already, and Granicus has the team addresses, so everybody on the team gets the email. And as a project, we work on the project team together, so everybody would be assigned.
Okay, I'll just ask it slightly different. Who will come to our once per month meeting and give a status update on the project?
It could be myself, Dave, or Randy. So again.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Justin, it sounds fantastic. It sounds from a municipal and government standpoint, you're on point with the needs of local government, which is exactly what we've been looking for. So I'm glad Renee and our team has found you and was able to work something out. I mirror Commissioner Mobilio's comments. This is something I think it's going to be a long-term benefit to our community and our residents. So sounds great. Are there any questions or comments from the public on this particular presentation? Okay, I'm not seeing any.
Commissioner Morgan, before we go to a vote, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I had one more question from a budgetary standpoint. This question would be for Renee. I know that you had mentioned that we didn't have the funding in our budget for this year for this, and we were going to wait until next year. So how will this project be funded, and how do we move forward with that in advance of?
We did consider this when we looked at the budget. Steve, I don't have off the top of my head the particular line item that we took it out of, but when we adjusted and looked at our budget over the last several weeks, we figured for this project into that calculation. Steve might have the
Correct.
exact line
Yeah,
item.
correct. It was, I believe, out of the IT budget and admin. We were able to find some funds in there to fund this currently.
All right, thank you.
Just want to make
Is there
one really
funding available for this year to initiate this?
I just want to make one quick point of clarification, just because I had previously mentioned, I think during a public meeting, that a colleague of mine or a friend of mine who wasn't in IT and did websites, I had suggested him as a possible resource for the township's website. Mr. Brinkman and his company is not the person that I recommended, which I'm happy for. I'm thrilled with the product. I just wanted to make it clear to everyone that the person I recommended is not the person that's been chosen by the township, and just out of full transparency.
Thank you, Commissioner Mobilio. All right. If there are no more questions, do I hear a motion to move forward to proceed with engagement of Granicus for our website, agenda management, and video streaming?
I'll make a motion.
I'll make a motion. Commissioner Morgan makes a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Commissioner Stetton. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Commissioner Walk?
Aye.
Commissioner Mobilio?
Aye.
Commissioner Stetton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Aye. Motion carries. Justin, thank you for being here tonight and for presenting and working with our staff. We look forward to the relationship.
Thank you as well, and can't wait to get started with y'all. Thank you.
Take care. Have a good evening.
Bye.
All right. Next this evening, for consideration and possible action, we have a motion to allow the Public Works Department of South Whitehall Township to mutually cooperate with and provide mutual assistance to the Public Works Departments of Upper Macungie Township, Lower Macungie Township, and North Whitehall Township in the form of vehicles, equipment, materials, services, and manpower. Should situations arise whereby the cooperating townships request assistance due to emergencies, disasters, shortages, and/or other situations where the Director of Operations determines in his discretion that providing such assistance or services will not overburden the township or the Public Works Department. Renee, would you like to present on this, please?
Sure, I will. This is actually a motion that essentially started a conversation with township managers from North Whitehall, Upper Mac, Lower Mac, and myself as we entered the COVID pandemic. And one of the concerns was, what would happen if, somebody was tested positive and it took down a whole crew that had experience in, say, sewer. Would we be willing to help out in the event of an emergency, to send manpower, and intellectual knowledge to help out? We do a lot of these things on a regular basis anyway, of collaboration and a cooperation with the other municipalities over the years. And so this was just, each municipality wanted to put a motion on their agenda to say that we would agree to help each other out if the need arose in that emergency. And the conduit to doing that would be going to Director of Township Operations, and he would have the ability to say yes, no, kind of determine where we were at as a group as well, not to burden our staff. North Whitehall and Upper Macungie have passed this on their agenda and their board meetings already. So again, really just kind of, saying that we're willing to help each other out in the event of an emergency.
Thank you, Renee. Are there any questions or comments on this particular motion for consideration this evening from the board? I had a couple of questions. I did read the Morning Call article today regarding Upper Macungee's meeting where they discussed this matter, and their township manager was quoted as saying that this motion isn't legally binding, which I understand. But my question would be for Attorney Zader, if we're sharing equipment and our staff, our public works staff, from a township point of view, what is for workers' comp if there's an injury, or if there's one of our township workers, for example, were to do some damage in another township, since it's not a legally binding document, then what are the ramifications for us as a township from a legal standpoint?
I didn't see the article on the Upper Macungie comment from the township manager, so I assume you're talking about Bob Ibach, who is the township manager in Macungie. I think what he was probably suggesting when he said that is that there is a more formal approach to the motion in the form of a formal contract adopted by resolution. Once upon a time, it had to be adopted by ordinance, and it's called intergovernmental cooperation. That's not what this is about tonight. It's a more informal approach. And I was speaking with township manager, our township manager, Renee Bickle, about this. She explained that the intent is that if there is a specific project that might have an exposure or potential liability because of damage, for example, we're going to send a crew that might get involved in opening up a sewer line using our camera system, or doing something that has potential exposure like that, there probably in those instances be more formal action taken. So this motion here is really intended to deal with day-to-day cooperation, which was noted by Renee, has already been going on. It's just been formalized a bit among multiple municipalities. I think in the past, our cooperation traditionally has been for the most part with Upper Macungie. So that would be my explanation.
Yeah, if we were going to do a major project for them or any, number one, we would never turn our equipment over to the other municipality. We would always be the operator of the equipment. But if we were doing a larger project, that would be a formal agreement that we would enter into and bring to the board. This is just saying, this is just to inform you that, if Upper Macungie has a person, again, who takes a whole crew out with COVID, that they call and say, hey, we need some sewer knowledge. Can you help us out? Again, it happens anyway now.
Okay, thank you. And just to follow up to that, Renee, how would you as a township manager then procedurally be kept aware of staff and equipment leaving the township?
Again, this has to go through for permission to Director of Township Operations, which is Randy. So I would be notified of Randy. And again, typically I would be notified before as well. But we would be notified of that because they would have to call Randy for any assistance anyway.
Okay, thank you.
I just had one question. The cooperating townships, will they do the same? Will they pass a similar motion that we are?
Yes, 2 have already done it. Upper Macungie has done it, North Whitehall has done it, and Lower Mac is doing that in June because I don't believe they had they didn't have a need for a meeting in May.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments on this particular motion for consideration by the board? Are there any questions or comments from the public? I'm not seeing any. Steve on the chat.
I
All
do
right.
not see any.
Thank you. That being said, do I hear a motion to move forward with the to allow the public works cooperative effort?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Would I take a second from Commissioner Stetton?
Yep.
All right. Have a roll call vote, please, Renee.
Commissioner Walk,
Aye.
Commissioner Mobilio,
Aye.
Commissioner Seton,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
All right, next this evening, under correspondence and information items, we have our public notice of our Planning Commission meeting on Thursday, May 21st at 7 p.m. George, did you want to add anything to that?
I would just add, Commissioners, that tomorrow night, there's only one land development item on the docket, and that is Ridge Farm. But I will say that I would anticipate this is one of several meetings that will be before the Planning Commission with respect to this subdivision, as it'll be more of a general discussion tomorrow more than anything else. So I don't anticipate a recommendation or anything like that coming out of tomorrow's consideration.
Thank you, George. Stay with us. We also have a public notice of a zoning hearing board meeting on Wednesday, May 27th.
Yes, Commissioners. So there are two items on the zoning board docket for the 27th. One is a dimensional variance that was tabled some time ago. It's being considered for what's called the Jaffa residence, and the other is a special exception consideration related to a non-conformity request.
Thank you, George.
Sure.
All right. From our police chief, Mr. Dorney, what do you have for us on a statistics report, please?
Thank you, Commissioners. Tonight, I will discuss some of the reports that we've had over the last month, and obviously the numbers are going to be down quite considerably, as you'll see, due to the COVID pandemic. So for the month of April, we handled 657 reports, and that's compared to 1,013 in 2019. So we had 356 less reports this month in April this year than we did last year. The EMS calls are still our number one call for the month, with 187 of those, and many of those were in fact COVID related. So the officers are really very diligent with the PPE that we're wearing, and also just kind of limiting the exposure as much as possible. So we've been fortunate at that level. When it comes down to the crime reporting, the UCRs, we dropped dramatically again. We only had 45 crimes reported for the month compared to 116 last year. So 71 less than we did last year. Our arrests are down as well. We only had 9 arrests for the month, and compared to 56 from last year. And we are at 3,422 reports for the year to date, compared to, let's see here, we had, we don't have it down for the actual month last year. So 356 less for the month, but so we're definitely a little bit less busy than we were last year due to the COVID. But I will say that in the last week and a half to 2 weeks, you can definitely tell the activity out in the public has dramatically increased. I would say in the last week, traffic wise, you see a lot more cars on the road, even though we are still in fact in a stay at home status per the governor's order. So there are a lot more people out there definitely enjoying the parks. We have noticed that they are social distancing as much as possible, and we do appreciate all the cooperation we've had from our residents. They've been great. Anytime we've had a complaint of either social distancing or businesses that they didn't believe were essential, might not be open, they either had a waiver or they were very, very appreciative and, quite frankly, very cooperative with anything that we've done with them. So kudos to our public. They're doing a great job keeping this pandemic kind of quarantined outside of South Whitehall as much as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Just a little shout out to the police department too. I'm not sure if anybody saw it in the paper. They were doing some like drive-by parades for some of the local school children in all the different neighborhoods, and it was very exciting and very well received. And it was nice to see everybody out there recognizing our essential employees, including police and emergency services and fire, and not to be forgotten, our amazing public works departments who are out there for everything and anything, and no matter what. So, a huge shout out to all those different people.
Yeah, thank you. And on that note, I do want to add just, I know we've gotten a ton of requests for birthdays, things like that to the public of doing parades. It's to the point where it's out of control that we cannot accommodate everybody. So we've kind of taken the stance that we just cannot do it anymore. The parade for the kids was something that we collaborated with the school district, just due to the fact that our kids are definitely not in a position to fully understand what they're going through right now, and we wanted to kind of brighten their day up. So we wanted to have the opportunity to work with them and let them know that we're here for them and that we appreciate what they're doing. So we actually collaborated with the school district to do that, and we hit all 3 elementary schools in the township and hit, I think it was 300 and some homes that people cooperated with, the kids that signed up for it. So Officer Grozier and Lieutenant Brown did a fantastic job. Grozier actually sat down and mapped out the route by hand by looking at all 300 addresses. So if there was anybody that got missed in that, it was a complete accident, but I believe we pretty much got everybody that signed up for it. So kudos to him and the whole department for really doing a great job during this pandemic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Chief.
George, if I could just add something real quick to that, just to give a thanks to the police department. I mean, besides the parade, which my kids signed up for, they thought it was amazing. I'm sure they went by Tori's house as well, because Tori's my neighbor. But on top of that, the police department does an amazing job of posting to social media. So for those people on the line that are not familiar, Instagram, Facebook, the Officer Grozier, he's very active on social media. The police department's very active on social media, just kind of updating things that are going on and thanking the community for the things they do. I highly recommend that those people who have social media accounts follow the police department, follow Officer Grozier. You will learn things and get a new appreciation for everything our police department does outside of just protecting.
And the Nextdoor app, if I could kind of put that out there, we have a great following on that. A very good success story from 2 days ago. Somebody lost their keys in Covered Bridge Park, and Officer Grozier put it up on Nextdoor, and within 20 minutes, the person who lost their keys was contacted by somebody else that said, "Hey, we were in the park earlier today. Did you lose your keys?" Because it's a BMW key, and he actually lost his keys, and we had the keys back within half an hour. So, and that was a success story just from posting on social media. So, but yeah, I agree. Officer Grozier does a fantastic job. He keeps up on it faster than I can, that's for sure.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Commissioner Mobilio. All right. Tony, what's going on with Pitcock Engineers? What can you share with us this evening?
We've had a steady flow of land development submissions through the township. A lot of them are resubmissions in the cleanup phase, but they are keeping us busy. And the second thing that's really starting that you'll probably start seeing is construction is beginning. There's a lot of companies that are using the COVID-19 policy, have their health and safety plans, but construction is beginning. So you'll start seeing some sites going to construction and being built.
Very nice. Thank you. All right. Next this evening, under direction and discussion items, we had a carryover from our last agenda, and it's a discussion about open space and fee in lieu of. I know this has been an ongoing discussion for the group on possible modifications to the process on that. I'll just start off the conversation with my thoughts on it and then open it up to, yes.
I'm sorry. I apologize for interrupting. The only reason I'm interrupting is because I just wanted to bring up a quick minor issue just to bring to the staff's attention that has nothing to do with the open space issue, but I think that the open space issue may be a lengthy discussion, so I wanted to just get this out there really quick. I got a request from a constituent, actually a member of the zoning hearing board, David Eisenberg and his wife Lori Eisenberg. They live down off of Winchester Road. They have a concern about the sidewalks along between Red Maple Road and Deerfield Drive along Winchester Road. Apparently, they're very wonky, and the homeowners are not taking appropriate care of them. I know that the homeowners are the first people who should be dealing with that, but of course, as township is secondarily liable for any injuries that might arise. So I would just ask the appropriate staff members to take a look at that area. So it's between Red Maple Road and Deerfield Drive along Winchester. Just see if there's anything we can do to notify those homeowners that those issues need to be addressed.
Yeah, Matt, this is George. If you could just email me what you just said, I will get that to Tom, and Tom will get on that immediately.
All right, thank you, George. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, this has been an ongoing discussion. It was introduced by Commissioner Kelly, and we've tabled it a couple times to gather some more information and get thought. I'll start things off with, my thought on it, pass it off to the rest of the board on any other action if they so choose. But in my opinion, the question was, should we be bringing the open space and fee in lieu of decisions or discussions in front of the board at a much earlier stage? And from a process standpoint, we have a variety of different recommending bodies. We have our shade tree, we have our park and rec, we have our public safety and our planning, all of which are involved in the process or hear of the open space or in lieu of fees in lieu of. And I did ask around to find out if we've had a history of issues where we've had developers go through the entire process and then get to the commissioners and then we change our minds because of that. And that is not an issue. In my opinion, I believe that the process is there for a reason. We have very, very intelligent individuals that review this information in detail on our different committees, Shade Tree, Park and Rec, and Public Safety and Planning. And for the board to get intimately involved in it in the very, very beginnings, I think could create a lot of confusion and stir. I will say I don't have a problem with once the Park and Rec committee makes the recommendation, if that recommendation would go in the board package, that's for informational purposes. But if the board has a question or a comment or an issue, I don't believe it should be something at that point that we should be discussing at a public meeting, because quite honestly, it should include the developer at that point. So if there were a question, it should go to Renee and then back to that particular board or recommending body. But I can't agree with changing the whole process to have the board be intimately involved in it in the beginning. And that's just my feelings on it and my view. And just as an add to that, I did ask too, from a legal standpoint, and we are absolutely following our own saldo with the process that we're currently involved in. So I'll open it up to the rest of the board for any questions or comments, because I think we do need to bring this one to rest because it's been on our agenda now for like the past 3 meetings. So make a decision.
This is Mike Walk. I'd just like to, we talked about several factors. One was the timing, who has the accountability. There's one other factor we may have touched on. It's scale. I believe the saldo says 50 dwellings. I think that was put in there intentionally. I made the point previously, like, certain developments are of such magnitude, like Ridge Farms or like the Crackersport warehouses, that, maybe we don't need to do this for all developments, but for certain very large scale developments, I do think it makes sense to ensure the BOC is involved and gives their viewpoint early on. I guess that's the only extra comment I'll make. And I think that just to be practical and reasonable about what we're doing.
Are there any other comments or thoughts on this particular topic?
I just want to clarify for the sake of those people listening who may not have had the opportunity to participate in previous meetings, and that is that the Board of Commissioners is the ultimate authority on this issue. Whether we are the first line of defense or last line of defense, the reality is we get to make the ultimate decision. In the way we currently do things, we're the last line of defense in that we rely on those experienced individuals and dedicated people in other committees and boards to look at the various issues, provide guidance, provide recommendations. I don't want anyone to be confused that things are put up on our table without us having the opportunity to have considered what the recommendations are, or that somehow we're bound by what those recommendations are. So while I appreciate the fact that we should have maybe more knowledge earlier on before we make a decision, the reality is that by the time it gets to us, it has passed through many different levels. It has had to go through many different iterations or recommendations and adaptations. And when we get it, it has been thoroughly vetted. Think about the fact that when the President of the United States signs a bill, that bill has had to pass through 2 houses of Congress, has had to be drawn through different committees, different people, different everything before it gets to the President's desk. And he relies on those recommendations, but also has his own decision to make, whether to veto or to accept that. We are the President in this situation. We rely on those houses of Congress, those committees, those boards to provide us with something that we can look at from a macro level as opposed to a micro level, relying on the expertise of those individual boards. So I have no problem with the process. I'm confident that it works well. I'm willing to continue to have the process be the way it is.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And I think what's important also to recognize is the decision of land dedication or fees in lieu. There's criteria that have to be met. It's not like a willy-nilly. You don't just pick one and go with it. There's a process that's followed. So, and I think that's very important to recognize. I'm certainly not against the board, knowing what the direction is of the development. But what I don't want to see is the board getting involved in the process at a point where all the information isn't available and it evolving into something it shouldn't be. If the recommendation wants to come in a board packet, like I said, and we have the opportunity just to know where it's going, if we want to make a comment or have thoughts, those comments and thoughts should go to Renee and then back to that recommending board or, as a concern or whatever. But I don't think opening that up for a very lengthy discussion, which quite honestly, I feel certain wouldn't just revolve around open space and fees in lieu of. It would expand into something much bigger and probably put us in a very difficult situation. And that's why the process is in place to begin with.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Morgan, sure. Thank you all for your comments tonight. I understand if you don't want to support what I had suggested to the board regarding our ordinance, that land dedication is a legislative decision. We can certainly take the step, Commissioner Morgan, that you recommended, that after Parks and Rec sees it, we can have it in our packet. Maybe we can begin to understand the process more with this new board moving forward and have further discussion as we go along.
Commissioner Stetton, did you have any thoughts or comments?
First, I think the appropriate people are looking at and making the decision for us. So that's the right thing to do. But my take on it is, generally speaking, open space is what we want. So anytime that we can get open space that is substantial, it's good for us. I'm all for that. And I think everybody in the township would potentially agree with me. Maybe not everybody, but most people will agree with that. And I think that's what the township is doing. All the people that are in the township, that's exactly what they're doing. So I'm supporting them fully heartedly.
Okay. So it sounds to me like there's the consensus to keep the process the way it is, and you know, we'll continue to watch it, and certainly, Diane, educate, you know, you all as newer commissioners on the process and how it works, and answer any questions or concerns. You know, if there's a recommendation made by the Park and Rec Committee, it certainly can go in our packet for informational purposes only, but not again, I emphasize it shouldn't be something we have an open discussion about without the proper individuals being available at a public meeting. So if there are questions or comments, they really should be directed to Renee, so that it can go back to through the proper channels. So that being said, unless there's any other comments or questions from the board or from the public, I think that we can put this one to rest for a while. All right. I'm not seeing anything on chat. No other comments. We'll move right into old business. We have Where's Dam? I don't believe there's any status updates on that, Renee, unless something's changed.
No, there is not any status updates on Where's Dam. We're still in the permitting process, but I did want to just mention one thing. We do have Advanced Disposal has asked us, and we have agreed to change some residents' trash pickup day to Wednesday from Thursday, which was their busiest day, with the addition of the new development on Walbert Avenue. So there are 246 residents who will be receiving a notice on their trash bins that their pickup day will be changing. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that in case it's in the Valley Forge Road area, Weathersfield, and in the Toll development area. That the pickup day is changing from Thursday to Wednesday to even out the service routes for Advanced Disposal.
Thank you, Renee.
Yep.
Any questions on that?
Can the public ask a question or?
There you go. And Mark, before you comment, I want to just want to add on a couple things. We're going to notice the flyers are going to be put on the trash cans for 2 weeks in a row, starting this week and next week. And then the change actually happens the week of June 3rd or whatever that is. It may be the pickup day, June 3rd. Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mark, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So I had a question about Where's Dam. Well, one thing I wanted to mention real quick is that Fountain Hill also passed the resolution tonight, just so that you guys are aware. So thank you for your support, and Fountain Hill is also supporting. But I did have a question on Where's Dam. I thought maybe Steve Carr would have this information. If I remember correctly, we were like putting aside money into a bank account for Where's Dam, and I'm assuming that's somewhere between 150 and 200,000. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah, I believe it's 150, but it may be 150, 200 with this year's. I can't remember.
Okay, yeah. So with this year's, it would go up to 200,000. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. So anyway, so this is, it reminded, Commissioner Kelly reminded me about this when she was talking about fiscal responsibility. It seems to me that money should probably be released into the general fund, based on the COVID economy as we have it now. And it seems like the commissioner should, maybe you already are, but I think that you could be discussing releasing that money. I mean, obviously, Where's Dam has been on old business forever. Money is just sitting there. And in this environment, we certainly need to be using the money more prudently than just sitting in the bank.
I'll make a quick comment, Mark, about from a financial standpoint. I mentioned at the last meeting that we were going to bring a budget amendment to today's meeting. I actually learned working with the solicitor that we actually need to do a resolution on that. So we have to advertise that motion. So I wasn't able to bring that in time for this meeting. But we have worked as the management team has worked to build a kind of a COVID budget amendment that from obviously the information we have to date, looking forward. So currently I'm not looking to tap, or we're not looking to tap into any fiscal stability monies, Wares Dam or otherwise, yet.
Yeah, I think it should be, I think it certainly should be discussed by the board as to whether we need to have $200,000 just sitting in the bank when we're not sure how we're going to pay for the website and things of that nature.
Well, just to jump in there real quick, and I'm glad Mark brought this up. It's something that's been a concern of mine since the original referendum was passed, and that is that, first of all, the referendum allocated certain dollars for Wares Dam without really forecasting what the ongoing maintenance costs would be. And I got to be honest with you, and I have no problem admitting this. I am a huge opponent of spending the massive amount of dollars to maintain Wares Dam that we're allocating. And if I would ask, and I don't know what the proper procedure is for this, but I think that money should be released into the general fund immediately. And I think we should be amending whatever existing ordinance there is or whatever authority we need to make sure that not another single dollar goes towards maintaining or doing anything further with Wares Dam, considering the fact that none of this money was anticipated when that referendum was voted on.
We have a question in the public too on Wares Dam from Monica Hodges.
Hi, my question is, I don't know exactly what the waiver is for, what you're waiting for. I was just going to ask if you could clarify and explain it, but I also wanted to comment on it. Way back in 2016, when the community voted to save it, you heard the community speak. It's very meaningful to community members, and we get all kinds of grants for Parks and Rec. Why can't we get some kind of grant for Wares Dam? Thank you.
I think we had
dams in general are incredibly disfavored by the state government. They don't want them. They don't want to support them. They don't want to give us money for them. I can't tell you why. I think maybe Randy or someone else can tell you what that is. The reality is that dams are not favored by the state. And so when that happens, there are no dollars allocated, no grant money allocated for dams. This was obviously I wasn't on the board at the time, and I have no opinion as to whether it was right or wrong at the time. All I will say is that it was a vote of the citizens to allocate certain dollars to restoring the dam or maintaining the dam without an expectation as to dollars to be dedicated to in the future. And we've been forced to dedicate dollars to it because of that vote that was made back in 2016. So there are no grant dollars. There is no money to support it. It's coming out of taxpayers' pockets. And at the end of the day, when we're going to talk about fiscal responsibility and COVID budgets, it's insane, in my opinion, to think we should reserve $200,000 in a fund that could be used to at least buttress, look, that could be used to reduce taxes. That could be used to offset increases in property taxes or other increases. I don't understand how we can argue at the same time that we should have all this money dedicated to Wares Dam, but then we're going to complain about, well, we can't raise taxes. I know we're going to have a shortfall. We need to cut spending or do these other things. Wares Dam is not a priority. It shouldn't be a priority.
Well, it is a priority to the community, and the community has told you loudly and clearly that that is one thing that they would pay taxes for. And that is a historical place. Where else in the Lehigh Valley can you see that covered bridge? Can you see that dam? I'm not saying go out and have a big fundraiser to put money, thousands and thousands of dollars away for the dam right now. But right now, you know, that dam was there a long time before we were. It's going to be here a long time after we're gone. I think right now we should just let it go instead of even making it an issue. It means something to your constituents.
I don't dispute that it means something, but we can't just quote unquote let it go. We have to maintain it. We have to pay for it to be maintained. That is not an expense that was anticipated when this referendum. Let me ask you this. Do you believe, and I really have no idea what the answer to this is, and I have no idea what the answer to this would be from other citizens, but do you believe that it would have the referendum would have the same support if the referendum said not only are we allocating these dollars at this time, but that in perpetuity we'd be spending between $50,000 and $100,000 a year to maintain the dam?
You're going in and out. You're going in and out. I'm sorry. You're going in and out.
Well, what I'm trying to say is there is a difference between allocating it one-time payment to maintain or preserve something, than to maintain and preserve it, but then expect to have to pay into perpetuity to maintain it, and $50,000, $100,000 a year, whatever that might be. So my point is, we had a lengthy discussion last meeting about how we shouldn't be building parks or allocating or spending money on the Covered Bridge Park project that's already been allocated, and yet here we are arguing that a dam a few feet away, we should be spending $50,000 a year forever to maintain. So I guess I'm confused as to why one thing is important and the other isn't, when neither one of them objectively would be a necessity in this time.
I never said a park wasn't important. I just feel that a park is not important at this time. I think it's very important. It's very important for the well-being of our kids, of our community, our citizens. Very important, but not right now. It needs to be paused. The same with the dam. It needs to be paused and have the grants, have people really looked into the grants. I don't know the answer to this, Mr. Mobilio. I don't have any answers, but has that been exhausted, the grants? And I realize the environmental concerns. There's been a number of dams that the county, the state have removed over the years with good reason. There's also been some mess with some of them, just like Robin Hood Park and Lehigh Parkway. It's been a mess with all the silt and so forth. But I'm just saying, it's just something that I think needs to be paused. I don't know. And I think you listen to your people. That's all. That's all.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. And what I'm hearing you say is you believe that the park project should be paused, and therefore you also believe that the Weirs Dam should be paused, that's exactly what we're talking about. Let's not spend any more money on Weirs Dam until we can get this whole thing figured out. I mean, if you agree with that.
I don't think we should be spending any unnecessary money on anything right now. I know how it is in our household. If your household is different, good for you. But I know we're really watching what we're doing. And there are a lot of people really, really hurting from this. And we just have to be really sensitive about what we do and the actions our township takes, because what are we really saying to people when people are having such a hard time? They're out of work. Some people haven't gotten stimulus checks. Some people, because they have a part-time job that they can't even do right now, they're not even eligible for unemployment. A lot of musicians. My son is one of them.
Let's not, then you and I can agree that let's not spend another dollar on Weirs Dam until the economy stabilizes.
And release the funds that are stuck in the bank.
May I ask a question? I don't know if Steve or Renee can answer this. How much money are what have been the expenditures for the dam this year and last? I'm not familiar with that.
Well, it's not a recurring type of expense right now outside of going through the permitting process which is where we're in right now, or the permit process. So what we're looking at is what's the cost of, what is the DEP going to require us to do with the dam if we choose to keep the dam? And then that will drive whatever the cost estimate of that ends up being. So right now you're talking about and I mean, we have some estimates on potential fixing of it that's well north of $1 million. But there may be fixes that are somewhere less than that or more than that. That's unknown until we hear back from the state.
And Steve, just to be clear, the resolution was on borrowing $500,000. That's still there. And the $200,000 that's in the bank is over and above what the people voted for. Is that correct?
Correct.
The referendum was for $600,000. The initial cost back after that referendum is well north of that number because of the DEP requirements. And so each year the township has put $50,000 into an account to get towards the 600,000, but we know that it will be much more than 600,000 to fix. So so that is what's sitting there. The referendum indicates, and Joe Zader, you could correct me, that the township could go into debt for up to $600,000 to fix the dam. Just a quick message on grant funding for the dam. Matt Mobilia, you kind of hit the nail on the head with that one. Again, there's a lot of funding for grant removal. There's not so much grant funding for repair and rehab.
But just to be clear,
Well,
we
it
are
sounds
now.
like there's a legal implication here with a referendum and not. So is this something that we should maybe have a workshop on so that we can get brought up to speed with what does this mean for us as a township and allow the citizens to have input as well, since they did vote for this?
Well, when I'm asking for anything, I'm only asking for the $200,000 to be released, which was not voted for.
But that's the point.
That's
I think
something the finance committee
the
has
point
definitely looked at.
the point that's being missed here is that the public did not vote for $1 million plus expenditure. They voted for $600,000 to be spent, and we are 4 years, almost 4 years beyond that referendum vote, and nothing has happened, and we still don't know how much it's going to cost. And what we've heard is it's going to cost well in excess of what was voted on 4 years ago. So this idea that we need, we couldn't agree on a working group to help generate revenue for the township, but now we need a working group to talk about a referendum that was passed 4 years ago that has not come to fruition and that we haven't taken step one towards because of DEP and things outside of our control. I mean, what is the point of putting this money aside? I mean, we're sitting here in the middle of a pandemic. We've got people opposing parks that are used by everybody, but supporting dams that haven't moved for 4 years that will help only a handful of people. I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Well, I don't think anyone here is talking about supporting or not supporting. I'm saying I personally don't have enough information on it. I was not on the board when that happened, and the finance committee has looked over our budget and certainly are looking at every line item with the staff to get the budget balanced and amended.
Renee, what do we need to do? What do we need to do to release that $200,000 into the general fund? What legally do we need to do? Do you know, or Joe?
I would look to Joe. My guess is you would have to do nothing. That was not part of the referendum, was not to set $50,000 aside a year. That was a choice that the prior board had made to help fund that, because the referendum, Joe, you can correct me, my recollection is the referendum was, would the township citizens allow the township to go into debt for up to 600,000, so that the money that has been set aside in fiscal stability has no play on the referendum. That's my understanding. Joe, you can.
That would be absolutely correct. What was voted on by way of referendum was called electoral debt. And it was an authorization by the public to support the township going into debt for the specified amount. And that's really it. It has nothing to do with the ultimate price tag. and has nothing to do with any other budgetary set-asides or allocations that the board may choose to make. So if there would be an interest by the board of taking the action that Commissioner Mobilio is suggesting, the procedure to follow would have nothing to do with the referendum. It would be purely a matter of dealing with it like any other fund allocation, any other set-aside that you have.
So how does that 600 grand that was approved, the debt to go into, would that be, that money is not set aside, that's something we have to get a bond for, or how would that work exactly?
Correct, that would be a loan.
You would do a loan, and then they would go into, we would create a tax. I mean, that's what that is. Everybody agreed to go into, for them to go into debt. So that's how that was worked. The extra 200,000, like Joe had mentioned, was separate. It was money put aside for the additional cost. So.
And just Matt, just for a little clarification, in that since that referendum passed, we have worked with the engineers, and the DEP application is in. They take 12 to 18 months to come back. We have no idea if they will approve or deny our permit. So it's still in the permitting process. But the cost estimate, the DEP is considering it a rebuild where we considered a rehab. So that's going to be the cost differential. Restoration.
If DEP comes back and says, okay, here's your permit, and then our best estimate from or whoever's going to do the project is $1 million, but the taxpayers only approve 600,000, it doesn't happen, or are we forced to incur another $400,000 in debt?
Well, I would say DEP would come back, issue a permit, not issue a permit. We would have to go out to bid and all of that stuff. They wouldn't come back with the actual cost. It would have to go to bid. Joe, I would refer to you to say, if it comes back significantly higher, is that something that we have to do? Can you?
There's one more aspect to this that has not been discussed, and admittedly it's hazy because it's been several years, and if anybody at staff recalls, certainly please say so. But my recollection is that the DEP currently, based upon its own inspection of the dam, considers it to be deficient, and it must be repaired. So the process we're going through with the permitting is to determine the scope of the mandatory repair. Ultimately, when we get through that DEP process, we will have no choice but to repair it. And that day is coming. We just don't know when or what the price tag is going to be. Back when the referendum was initially under consideration, the board at that time was faced essentially with two options: keep Wares Dam and repair it to the extent necessary required by DEP, or take advantage of funding by Wildlands Conservancy that was willing to fund removal of the dam. My understanding is that that option is no longer on the table, and therefore it's a matter of having to address the deficiency as determined by DEP. And doing nothing, just letting the dam stay as it is now, at some point in the future, that will no longer be a choice.
So it will have to be repaired either way.
Yes, repaired or removed.
But the removal will have to be our cost also.
But there's grants for removals. That's the difference. That's what
but they expired, right? The grants expired.
No.
There would be opportunity for removal grants.
That's the thing, Joe. Is the state wants us to tear down dams. They don't want dams, so they will give us money to help us tear it down, but they won't give us money to repair it.
Correct.
Well, I don't know who is in charge of this particular issue, but I would implore whoever can look into this to determine what we can do to get out from underneath this obligation, and bring it before the board for some kind of vote or whatever has to be done. Because, when we talk about fiscal responsibility, I can't imagine a less important thing to do than to sit around and wait for a DEP permit to tell us that we have to spend $1 million+ on a dam.
The only thing I can say
Matt,
about
we still don't know what the ticket is going to be. We didn't get any information from DEP, so we don't really know it. We don't know what it is. We're
And 4 years
thinking
later,
maybe it will be $1 million, maybe it won't, but we don't know. Could be 200,000.
but the reality is that even if DEP came back and said, here's what you need to do, and we get it done for 600 or less, there's still ongoing maintenance costs. Is that fair?
I would guess you'd have to repair it at some point down the line if it's there. Obviously, it's going to wear out at some point.
Just to go back to the beginning, I was just requesting that the $200,000 be released back into the general fund. Obviously, the 600,000 that has been approved by the voters should remain.
Right, and I think that if you wanted to remove the $200,000 and release it to the general fund, I would think, Joe Zader, that would be a simple motion by consensus of the board to release the money for the $200,000 to be utilized in the general fund.
Yeah, I would.
With all due respect, was Mark is asking for a motion to move the money?
No, I'm just suggesting that you guys talk about it.
Yeah,
I was
and I don't think it's a move. Yeah, I don't think it's a movement of the money. I think it's a releasing the restriction that it's specifically for Wares Dam. Like I don't need the 200,000 to come into the general fund right now. We can leave it in fiscal stability. It can continue to bear interest for us. But it's the only thing is there's basically a restriction that the board has voted on with the budgets that specifies that 150 or $200,000, whatever it is right now, is specific for Wares Dam. So there's a restricted, it's basically just restricted funds right now. So it would just be releasing that restriction at some point in time. If there was a specific expense that needed to be covered by additional monies and we needed to go to the fiscal stability fund for that, then that would be a separate request.
So does there have to be a specific need for that 200,000, or can we just make the motion to release it at any point in time?
I think you should make the motion to release it.
I would release the restriction on it, like the Wares Dam restriction. If you were going to release something, you just release the restriction, and then it would just become fiscal stability fund money, which is a fund that supports the general fund anyway. It's not. I don't.
Not earmarked.
I wouldn't say the motion is to move it to the general fund. I would just leave it in the fiscal stability fund and remove the Wares Dam restriction if that's what you were trying to do.
Well, then I'm gonna make a motion to release the restriction on the $200,000 that's been set aside for Wares Dam, so that it can be used in the general fund.
I have a question. I'm not sure if it's, or maybe Renee might know it, or Mr. Zader, just legally, when money is line item in a budget and it's approved for certain expenditures, so over these years, obviously it's been put aside, what is the law that governs the moving of that money within a budget? I'm just not familiar with it.
Renee, I'll defer to you.
I don't know if there's a governing law. I mean, the money was put in the fiscal stability fund, in prior years. So again, I don't know. I mean, we would have to look at that. Steve, do you have any insight? I mean,
yeah, I don't know of anything that specifically said like that would specifically it's a restriction by the board at that point in time. I don't believe there's a law that overrides it. Joe can look at it. Obviously, that's an answer that doesn't come off the cuff. We could look into that further.
Like first class township code or whatever code governs our ability to move money in the budget. I just don't know.
Yeah, you can.
You're not moving money in the budget. You're just unrestricting money in the budget. Right now, it's been it was restricted in the budget by, for the dam. It's not, you're not moving it from another fund. It'll still stay in fiscal stability. It just won't be restricted for the dam. It could be used for anything.
Well, what I recall last fall, there was $50,000 allocated to Wares Dam in one of the workshops. Then Commissioner Pinsley asked for it to be removed, and it was, and then it was put back on later in that year before the budget was finalized. So there is $50,000 currently allocated for that in our budget. I know we talked about that in our finance meeting. So it's just a general question whether or not this motion is legal from a moving money around point.
When was the restriction put on, and why was it put on? Repeat, when was the restriction put on, and why was it put on?
The why is to allocate for Wares Dam expenses in the future, and the when was over the last, it predates me, but I'll say five. Let's say it's 200,000. There was 50,000 a year. So the last 4 budgets, they've basically said we're going to take $50,000 of general fund money. We're going to put it into savings in the fiscal stability fund allocated toward future Wares Dam expenses.
Might I suggest this? Unless staff is certain that it's appropriate for this motion to potentially pass this evening, I'm not in a position to weigh in on it. I'm really not even involved in the budget process. So I don't have enough knowledge about exactly where we are with this right now to give an opinion. So if staff is comfortable that there's no issue, I have nothing to say about it. But if you're looking for a legal conclusion, I would need to look into this.
We can look at First Class Township Code in the budget, and if it's so desired, we can look into it and place it on the next agenda with an answer.
Yeah, I think
that's what I was going to say, because that will correspond to reviewing the entire amended budget if that gets done in the time frame expected.
The amended budget. I'm not, listen, if we're going to rely on looking at the entire budget along with this line item, then I would insist on the vote on the motion tonight.
Yeah, I don't know what it has to do with the entire budget. It doesn't have anything to do with the entire budget.
Well, I guess in a way it does if we're talking about needing $200,000 to go into the general fund. It is a general question.
No.
And that I would not.
Could
I clarify?
I don't understand what everyone's missing. I don't understand what everyone's missing. No one's moving money. We're simply lifting a restriction on how certain money could be used. No one's picking up money out of pot B to move into pot A. We're just saying the money that's in pot B can be used for whatever the hell we want. That's what we're saying.
Well, a line item in this year's budget is $50,000 specifically for Wares Dam. So yes, it would be actually moving money out of a particular line item in the 2020 budget.
Oh, okay. Oh, look, then listen, I want
the work that we've done on the finance committee.
I want a roll call vote on my motion. If the idea is to delay this for what I consider to be irrelevant, not proper purposes, then I want a roll call vote on the issue tonight. If it passes, then in the future we can have the money move back if we need it. Okay, but it's been sitting there. We're putting money aside for 4 years to grow cobwebs in a corner somewhere for a purpose that may never come to fruition. So why not make the money available so that we don't have to go through this process again? And then if and when we need to move it back to Wares Dam, we can do that. But there's no reason to have it earmarked and put aside for something that may never happen when we could use it in the time of crisis. So I would ask that, regardless of the conversation, we make my motions on the table. I would ask for a second or a roll call vote so that we can make the determination. And if it gets voted down, that's fine, and I'll bring it up another time. But there's no reason to have this money set aside, squirreled away, and it's just literally just doing nothing when we could have it available if and when it's needed.
Matt,
Well, I
Matt,
think it's not
Matt,
squirreled away so
Matt,
much as that it's
Matt.
there to, I'm sorry, can I finish? The money has been put aside for the last 4 years in response to a referendum from the community that voted in favor of this. It was just
That's not true.
apparently,
That's false. That's inaccurate. That money has been set aside if there was an excess needed, and that was only by vote of the commissioners. The $600,000 that was approved by referendum, as Joe Zader's already said, would come from a bond or a debt that we would acquire. So that money that's been set aside has been completely voluntary, with the expectation we might need it someday. But that $600,000 was voted on to acquire debt, not to squirrel money away for the future. So it is completely inaccurate to say that the voters approved of this $50,000 to set aside, because they didn't. That was a voluntary decision by the board, previous boards, to try to protect or support a possible shortfall in that $600,000 in debt.
well,
So,
that's where I'm
I'm gonna-
apparently misinformed because I thought it was the other. So that was something that I would want to get some more information on. I am not familiar with the reasons for that.
Well, Joe Zader just explained that to you. I was just explained to you a few moments ago. I don't know what more
I'm talking
information
about the
you need.
intentions of the particular commissioners for the last 4 years. That's the comment I was making. But
Well,
anyway,
that
go ahead
doesn't-
with your.
Go.
We have a motion on the floor to release the restrictions of the $200,000 being held for Ware's Dam that is independent of the referendum monies that were originally voted upon by the residents of the township. Motion on the floor from Commissioner Mobilio. Do I hear a second?
I'd like to make just a little statement before. First, I love the Weirs Dams Park. I think it's a park that is a jewel of the township. Everybody loves it. I'd love to see it in its current situation, but I fully understand Commissioner's Mobilio argument on it, and I'll second it.
We have a second from Commissioner Stetton. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Commissioner Walk,
Yeah, I'd like to make my statement that I tried to make a few times earlier, and then I'll vote. I believe I agree with Mark Tinsley's request. I appreciate Commissioner Mobilio's zeal for making the change. I believe we should listen to Joe Zader, who said he's uninformed and he would like the opportunity to advise us. And that would mean coming back in 2 weeks and then voting.
We have a vote from you.
so you would be, can I have your vote?
What's your vote, Commissioner Walk?
I'll abstain because I think we should have Solicitor Zader review this quickly and give us his viewpoint.
I don't think you can abstain. I think you can't abstain from it. You either have to vote yes or no. What's your reasoning in abstaining? There's not a conflict. I mean, I could be
Okay.
wrong, but I don't know if you can
Thank
abstain.
you for the education. I didn't know that.
So Commissioner Walk, you're
I'm going to vote no only because I believe it would be prudent to hear Joe Zader's advice.
okay. Commissioner Mobilio,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
No.
Commissioner Stetton,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye. Steve, I think what you would need to just verify is the amount of monies, the total amount of monies that would need to be unrestricted. That I don't know what the exact total is.
Yeah,
If it's
it's,
200
I just went back to the budget. We set aside 100,000 through 12/31/19, and we have 50,000 in the current year budget allocated to move to fiscal stability earmarked to Ware's Dam. So it'll be $150,000. Basically, there's no other restrictions inside the fiscal stability fund, so that would just mean there's no funds restricted in there.
Very good, thank you. Motion carries. All right.
There's a comment in the chat. Commissioner Morgan, there's a comment in the chat.
Oh, there is. I just saw one come in. Yes, thank you. Manley, it says, I believe that the set aside by previous commissioners was to not have to borrow the full 600,000. That's Manley's question. Joe, would you like to explain how that referendum, what the explanation of that is to answer Manley's question?
Sure, I'd be glad to. The $600,000 referendum was an authorization by the public to borrow up to that amount through what's called electoral debt. If by chance the price tag after the DEP permit and review process is concluded comes in at less than $600,000, it's not mandatory that the full amount be borrowed. Now, Manley's question, I think he was suggesting that his recollection of the board decision with the monetary set aside, what Steve said was $100,000 through 2019 and now an extra $50,000 for 2020 for a total of $150,000. Manley's recollection is that was not to supplement the $600,000, but to have kitty, so that less than $600,000 could be borrowed to take care of the Wares Dam expense. So that was his question. And I guess that would take either recollection by somebody in attendance or reviewing the minutes. But that was Manley's recollection. He was asking if that was the case. Manley, did I get that right?
Yes.
To be fair, regardless of what the intention was, it was not a requirement based on the referendum. So that may very well be what the prior board had earmarked or allocated that for, was for that purpose or possibility. But this board is not legally obligated to follow that intent. Is that fair to say, Joe?
That's absolutely correct. In fact, even though the referendum passed, it is not mandatory that the board follow through on that referendum by incurring debt either.
The money that was being accrued, it was not my understanding that was going to be put towards that 600,000, but it was the money being accrued for the concern that the amount to fix the dam was going to be well over that 600,000.
How soon after the referendum did we learn what the cost of the dam repair was going to be?
We didn't.
We still don't know what the exact cost is going to be. That was prior to me. There was a study done from engineering that estimated it, but the DEP plays a role in that, considering a restoration or a rehabilitation. And so we don't have a definitive answer yet. And
right. Well, I was just wondering on the timing, because it looks like the voters approved this in November of 16. So if you do 4 years, it looks like that very first budget cycle already money must have been put aside.
It was not in 16.
So not till 17?
I think it was 18 and I think it was 18 and 19 and 20.
18, 19, and 20.
For the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are we ready? Can we move on to campus renovation project? Steve, would you like to report out on that one?
Yep, I'll give a quick update on that, and I'll let Renee or Randy jump in if you guys would like to. The renovation is kind of back on, I'll call it full bore. If you go by the campus, you see there's actually a lot of visual things you can see now with excavation and site work beginning and moving along. I was actually in the back of the building today, and there's a nice big cutout hole for where the addition is going. So just a couple things I wanted to quickly touch on. I know last time there was a comment, Mike had a comment about the first construction financial report that came out from Boyle. I did go back and work with Boyle and the team. There were some things about that report that were a little funky, Mike, that the calculations were based off of, there was an original budget that was the original estimated budget before we went to bid, but we came in significantly lower on our bid. So the price to complete was calculating off of those numbers. So I'm going to send out to the board again tomorrow an updated one I just got this evening from them, which actually shows the prices calculating correctly. We have, from an overall budget standpoint, from construction, we have about 500,000 reserves that are built in, a little over 500,000 reserves that are built into the project pricing that we received. We've used about $95,000 of those through the demo phase, which is usually your most costly phase in a construction, where you would use some of your reserves. So we're actually in a pretty good spot right now from that standpoint. Everything else is kind of on track. From a schedule perspective, I think we're kind of at the beginning of this project, we gained a lot of days early on in the schedule plan, and then we gave them all back with the COVID shutdown. So we're back to kind of on track from the initial plan that was worked on with all of the primes. So we're hopeful that obviously we keep going and there's not something else that slows us down, but we're hopeful that toward the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, we'll be in our back in our building and back in our home, servicing the residents of the township.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. So I would like to sincerely give Steve positive feedback. I think we failed to recognize that he does have an extremely high workload with his financial management job, managing the budget update due to the pandemic, and also looking after the campus renovation project. So thank you, Steve, and for the great job that you're doing.
Appreciate that.
I just have one cost question. The report you had shared previously said like the invoices to date was like $877,000, which was about 10% of the total cost. Is that still the invoice level, or is it higher now?
It is a little bit higher than that, like 1.1 or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is actually good. You know, you'd like your percentage of reserved use to not exceed, you know, your invoices compared with the total project. So if those two numbers are equal, you know, project should be healthy. If it gets out of whack, that's something to look after.
Yeah, that's part of what I look at. So, yep, I think we're still early, but I'm happy that we're through kind of the demo phase. Is always that one where you kind of cross your fingers and hope that they don't find too many things in there. But we found some stuff, took care of it, and it seems to be moving on, and I'm pretty happy with where that progress. I mean, the campus stay outside the fence, but it looks like it's moving very nicely.
I have one other point. This is a process point. It's not so much for Steve. We had a bit of a discussion at the last meeting about, you know, these reports. So I went back and I looked at the previous agreement we reached. So this is just sort of like a reminder or memory jogger. President Morgan was instrumental in pulling this agreement together after a fairly long discussion, and Tracy did a great job documenting it. So I'm simply going to read from the February 19th meeting minutes. It won't take too long. Commissioner Kelly asked if there was a way the board could be provided monthly update on the project. Perhaps Boyle could come in and show us where we are with our budget on the project. and what the expected costs are. But then after quite a discussion, President Morgan summarized that regarding the reporting on the project, Renee and Steve can send the board prior to the second meeting of the month, the monthly Boyle Project Management Status Report for the review. If the board has any questions, they can send those back to Renee and Steve so that they can be answered at the second BOC meeting of the month. And if Renee and Steve cannot answer, then we could have Boyle come in and present to the board the area of concern. The second meeting of the month is when the invoices come in to the board regarding the project, as well as an update given at that time. And this was acceptable by the board and staff. So having read that, I would simply ask, would the board and staff like to reaffirm that that's the procedure we'll use?
Mike, I think we need to take into account that we've been in a pandemic and things are, I'm sure Renee and Steve will get a report to us in a timely manner. But if we haven't met that to the date, I think you have to be flexible in what we've been dealing with.
Yeah, and I'm fine with it, Tori. That's, I mean, like if you're comfortable with that, I'm comfortable with that scenario. And I was even still working on this up through almost the start of the meeting today, so I couldn't get this to you guys with enough time for you guys to obviously look at it. But I'm happy with what Boyle's come back with now, so I will send that out to you guys tomorrow. If you guys have questions next meeting, let me know, even though it's before the second meeting. Or if you guys have questions, you can email the board and me and Renee, and we can answer those for you.
I think though that the report from Boyle will be a monthly report. It will not be, you know, a daily log of what has occurred, but it will be the higher level monthly report back to the board.
I would also add, just to respond to Mike, just because Mike asked, you know, to confirm, the board to confirm and staff to confirm. I remember this conversation, and while I'm certainly not opposed to it, we didn't vote on mandating that Steve or anybody provide these reports. I mean, if he can put them together, great, but I am not comfortable with asking or requiring any staff member to do anything beyond their normal scope of duties, especially in this environment and about what's going on. So if the request is for the commissioners to support requiring or mandating that Steve provide these, you know, more frequent updates, then I do not support that.
And I think with all due respect, Mike, I don't think, you know, when we talked about that way back when, and I made my comment, it was to make less work for them, not more. I think Steve and Renee have control over this project, the day-to-day, you know, actions that are being done, and they can provide feedback to the board. It doesn't have to be a daily report from Boyle Construction or whatever. I mean, we're the legislators. We're not the administrators. They can handle that day-to-day work. That's for them to deal with and get back to us with the high-level details. I can't see making unneeded work for them. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, that's not what I said, and it's not what I have in mind. I simply read what we agreed in February to see whether people remember it and still agree. It sounds to me, I haven't heard anyone say yes. So, and I said, Steve has a high workload. Don't want to make any work for him. We don't need daily reports. I never said we need daily reports. A monthly report is fine. I have one proposal. Would it be all right with you if I wrote down like the 5 things that I think are appropriate for the board to receive in the report? And it's a short list of items. Steve already provides most of them. And it will be a high level. It'll be easily obtained from the report Boyle gives. And it'll be a dashboard that tells us the health of the project. And that will reduce the work that Steve has to pull his report together.
I would just say that I'm not going to agree to ask Steve to do anything more than transmit whatever Boyle gives to him. That's the best that I would do as far as approval.
Let's
Okay.
just let
Well,
Steve
Boyle-
and Renee
Boyle-
provide a
Boyle's
report to
report-
us and then see what that is, and we'll go from there. But I mean, they're highly educated, very intelligent individuals that can put together a report to provide to the commissioners exactly what they need to know. So let's let them do that. And then if we need some more information or if we have questions, we can ask it. I don't think any one of us needs to put an outline together for them to teach them how to give us reports. I think they're perfectly capable. So let's just let them do their job and come back to us with a report and see what we get. And if we have questions, we'll deal with it then.
All right, that sounds like what we agreed in February. Thank you.
Tori, just to indicate, we have been shut down since mid-March, and the project only started in January. So again, we provided a report on the status of the project tonight, and invoices have been on the agenda in the checks disbursements over the last several agendas.
Yep. That's why I mentioned about, the conditions we're under now. So it sounds like we have a direction to move forward in. All right, do we have anything else on campus renovations? All right, moving to credit cards.
I'm still working on credit cards, obviously, in my spare time. So still shooting for that June 30th deadline to have the ability to pay water, sewer, refuse online or through credit card, or water and sewer in addition to a new processor for refuse.
Well, when we talked about this earlier, during the website conversation, just remind me, Steve.
Really has nothing to do with the website. We can have whatever website at any point in time, because our processing will be through a credit card processor anyway. So there's a little bit of functionality. There's some functionality in our enterprise software, which is called customer self-service, which is a spot where our software and the invoices and stuff communicate to the person, so they can say, I want to pay this, and this with my credit card. So that will just be on whatever website we end up with. We'll end up with some links so that people can get to that spot.
And just as a reminder to the public, because maybe some people don't realize how complicated the back end of this is that there was a lot of work transitioning from a previous system to the current system, but also being able to pay water and sewer because they go to different, or trash goes to different fund than water and sewer. And I mean, this is not as simple as just like, hey, there's one bank account that everything goes into, so why can't we just do that?
Yeah, it's like going A to Z through the moon. So it's kind of one of those. And some of it was setup of this system previously, but some of it is trying to connect all of those to make it as automated as possible. And to tell you the truth, I don't even know by June 30th if I will be completely automated, and it may just be work on my team's standpoint to make sure the dollars are getting to the right funds. But there's other projects that kind of interact with credit cards that may be done before the project, may be done after the project, but my goal is to get it out so that people can pay their bills, even if it means that we have some work on our back end that can be more efficient as we finish those projects. So it's not the easiest thing with 7,000 customers, or more than 7,000 customers. It's really like 21,000 because everybody has 3 customer accounts right now. But we're trying to streamline it as much as we can, and we'll keep plugging away as we get there.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Are there any other questions or comments on the status of the credit card? All right. Now is the opportunity for courtesy of the floor. This is the opportunity for anybody to report on any non-agenda item. Is there any courtesy of the floor, Steve, that you received in the notes?
Yep, I'm going to invite Lee Salt to the floor.
Hi, Lee.
Hi, thank you, commissioners. I appreciate the time. I'll try to make this brief. Over the last couple meetings, you talked about playgrounds, we talked about developments that are coming up, and also open space. In addition, when a development comes into to the township, from my understanding, there is no requirement for the developer to build a playground for that development. Should we be thinking about having the developer incorporate a playground into the development so it doesn't add a burden to the township to have to develop or have to go out and get funds to build a playground for a developer who's bringing something in?
One thing to keep in mind, Lee, is that some developers, if they're building a 55 and over community, you know, I don't know what kind of playground you could put in for 55 and older, but it really is that type of requirement would actually probably require more oversight from the township as to what type would be appropriate. I think, you know, that whole issue would have to be really streamlined and probably add a whole new layer of bureaucracy to the township that maybe we're not all ready for. But I mean, I understand your concern. I think we probably can all appreciate it, but that's probably why we do the fee in lieu of open space, you know, issue. It's really an economic issue. If the developer wants to put in a community that attracts, you know, families and that sort of thing, they're going to put in a playground, but sometimes they might put in higher end apartments that are for singles or people that don't have kids. And so to make those sorts of requirements would, again, probably require a lot more bureaucracy to really nail down the details than we'd all be ready for.
Okay, but what about the possibility, just in addition to the current open space that they have to provide, an additional area that has to be dedicated to a playground that the township could then manage, as compared to us having to go get the land and buy the land and do those kinds of things?
Yeah, I have a comment. I think Lee Salt has a good idea in general, and I think we have an example coming up. I don't know, I don't have the detailed plan, but Ridge Farms, you know, 130 plus acres, 46 acres of open space, 17 acres of usable open space. Got a couple gazebos, mountain. I don't think I've seen a playground on that entire plan. So I think there's an example where Lee Salt's recommendation is entirely applicable.
Well, I believe the open space is going to be dedicated to the township. And then the township can make a determination as to what they want to put there based on whoever lives there, whether it's children, swimming pool, or other things. Maybe what we could do is a combination of open space and maybe some contribution as well. I don't know if that's possible or not, but we could do maybe that.
Well, one thing to keep in mind, I think, and maybe Joe Zader can correct me if I'm wrong, but what we can't do is we can't require one developer to do one thing and then another developer to do another thing that's completely diametrically opposed. In other words, we can't say, okay, well, we don't necessarily like your development, or we do, or whatever, but we want you to put in a 2,000 square foot playground. And then another developer comes in and we say, well, it's a smaller development, so we're not going to require you to do anything with the playground. So we have to be very careful as to the kind of demands that we put on developers, because honestly, at the end of the day, a lot of the accommodations that we get as a township from the developer are not required by law. It's more of just the developer kind of trying to work with us and be a good neighbor or be a good steward. So it's a tricky line between extortion and saying, we would like certain things in order for you to get a favorable opinion. So it's a very kind of gray area as to how much we can actually require from someone who wants to build here.
I understand. I'm just putting this out for an idea and the thought process, because maybe I heard somebody say earlier that, over 60 residents, there had to be this regulation. So maybe it's based upon the number of houses. Yeah, if it's 55 older community, maybe there it doesn't apply as much, or maybe it does apply because they have grandkids coming over. I mean, I'm 55 and I don't have any grandkids yet, but those kinds of things. So I mean, it's an idea. It's just something to put out there for thought, to save hopefully the township some money, not to have to purchase and go through grants to get more land and that kind of stuff, where we can possibly get that from the developer as part of their plan.
It's certainly an interesting concept, Lee. Thank you for bringing that to the board, and maybe we could research if any other communities do anything like that. I don't know if that's ever been done.
I'll just mention briefly, because this could be a long drawn out discussion. That's obviously not the intent here, but the ordinary way that townships wish to have playground amusements put in is typically you're going to have a combination, and this laws of the development more can facilitate it. You'll have a combination of land dedication, land set aside, and fee in lieu. And then the request is made by the township for the developer, instead of giving the cash to the township, to spend that money on playground equipment. And that's how it gets there. So ordinarily, it's not cash plus the playground equipment, because the ordinance establishes X number of dollars per unit in a residential setting. And most developers, they really don't care if they pay the cash or they set it aside for playground equipment. It can go either way, but that's typically the way it happens.
Thank you.
I think, and not to belabor it, but just from a playground standpoint, and Lee, yeah, I agreed. I thank you so much for your comment and your thought on this. But from a operational standpoint, from a township standpoint, we also have to be very careful and very strategic at playgrounds and placement of playgrounds, because they become a very, very big responsibility for maintenance. I'm sure Randy could speak on this. We're very proud of the amount of pocket parks we have in our community, and they're fantastic. But we do have some pocket parks that just don't get used, and the open space is probably better than putting on an official playground. So I think you definitely have sparked some thought, and maybe it's something we can look at as we move forward, and even looking in the comprehensive plan. But there is a lot of thought that goes into where certain pocket parks are placed strategically from an operational standpoint too, from the township's perspective. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Sometimes that doesn't get thought of. People think, you have a park and there's like little to no maintenance. There's a lot of maintenance on parks. So we try and be very conscientious as to where they are, to make sure that they stay in the best shape possible. So just something to think about. All right. Is there anybody else for courtesy of the floor this evening? All right, Steve, I don't see anybody else on the chat.
I have one more, Christina. Brian Height would like
you do. Hi, Brian.
Hello. My question is, what is the intended timeline of roadway improvements in regard to a development under construction? In other words, is a developer supposed to do the required roadway improvements, including any associated stormwater improvements, before, during, or after the actual construction of the project?
Ooh, I'll defer to Tony on that one, or our professional. I'm not exactly sure of all the detail on that. Well,
That's a good question, and it's a very general question. Sometimes it depends on what the roadways can handle and what type of improvements are being made. So take a residential subdivision. So say that the existing signals and the existing roadway network might be able to handle X amount of cars. So you might be at the point that PennDOT says you can put in 20 units and then that's it. And then at that point is when you start negatively affecting the signals, and the signals turn, the levels of service turn lower to E's and F's, and then you have to do the roadway improvements. So in terms of the timing of roadway improvements, sometimes that's the issue. If the roadway's needed, obviously, or the improvements are needed to for the vehicles that are entering or exiting in terms of an industrial or commercial or one of those type of developments, then you would think that they would be needed before you get a CO. Again, that's something that usually is written up in a resolution by the township or as a condition by PennDOT. In terms of the stormwater improvements, again, that's really subject to what you're building. If you have to once you start paving and you're increasing stormwater, you would think that you would have to manage that specifically in a basin or an inlet or not flood a neighboring property. So I hate to be general, Brian, I hate to be general with the answer, but it's kind of specific to what's being built, how it's being built, where it's being built, and what would be affected if and when it is built with or without the highway improvements.
Okay, yeah, my basic concern was based on the potential development, expanding its impervious coverage, going from 0 to, let's say, 1 million square feet.
Yeah.
Without the required stormwater controls being in place to handle that runoff. But I can't get any more specific than that because of
no, that's fine. That's fine.
I guess that's where I'm going. So
realistically, once you start digging in the ground, the conservation district would be managing the sediment runoff. They're in charge of perimeter controls, things like that. So usually you're in a said basin condition, and then once you start paving, the district controls the permitting. So you're not really allowed to have, if you pave a parking lot, but there's still construction, you still want a sediment control. But once your site's stabilized and there's no construction, they're going to be the ones that are asking you to convert it to permanent BMPs that would manage stormwater. So a spray irrigation system or an infiltration basin or what have you.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
thanks, Brian. Are there any other comments or thoughts for courtesy of the floor? All right. Our invoices and purchasing requisitions have been reviewed by the township manager and the director of finance. I do need a motion this evening to authorize that our checks be issued to pay our bills as tabulated. Do I hear said motion?
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Commissioner Stetton, I believe that was. Can I have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Walk?
Aye.
Commissioner Mobilio?
Aye.
Commissioner Seton?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. We have no executive session planned for this evening. I do need a motion for adjournment. Do I hear said motion?
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Mobilio, I think that was. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Stay well and stay safe.
Aye.
Thank you.